Chapter 10:18. The body was broken, the head rolled down, and the blood splashed. Under the night sky, before the cold and majestic voice of prohibition fell, the bodies of the two grandmasters of the invincible realm in East Island had been separated. Life and death in an instant. Abruptness, astonishment, panic. Before anyone could react, Li Tianlan's figure flashed continuously. How long did it take? Half a second? Or, in a shorter time, Li Tianlan almost directly reversed the situation. At the cost of consuming most of ruthless energy, he exchanged the lives of two superiors of the invincible realm, and saved flaming fire. All kinds of thoughts flashed in Li Tianlan's mind for a moment. The next second, Jiang Shangyu appeared in front of him. Jiang Shangyu's reaction speed was not slow. The energy of the final promotion of the 13th floor turned every divine weapon into a shadow, covering most of the battlefield. With the existence of the shadow, Li Tianlan could use the shadow formula to appear anywhere at will regardless of the distance. As long as Jiang Shangyu came half a second later, Jiang Guochu was doomed to die on the spot, not to mention the stronger Moraid. He escaped death. Jiang Guochu, with a pale face, stood in Jiang Shangyu's domain and breathed heavily. The violent panic was almost uncontrollable in his heart. He had seen death, and he had also seen the death of an invincible realm expert. The death of an invincible realm expert was not called death, but fall. This word was enough to explain the status of an invincible realm expert in the dark world. The death of any invincible realm expert was a big deal for the dark world. Jiang Guochu never thought that an invincible realm expert could be so fragile. In less than a second, two comrades whose strength was above his died instantly. In her sight, Li Tianlan was still at the moment when he killed Tianhai Wuji. Before the shadow disappeared, Li Tianlan had already killed Yagyu Kurasumi and appeared behind him. Fast. Unimaginably fast. The extreme speed turned into absolute power and killing intent at that moment. The so-called Kendo of East Island, and the so-called domain of the Jiang family of South America, were all like a joke at that moment. Jiang Guochu felt like an ant, a pale piece of paper, or a withered grass. Everything about him was so fragile in front of Li Tianlan. It seemed that if Li Tianlan touched him a little, his body would be like the two grandmasters in East Island. His flesh and blood would fly, and even his bones would disappear. He gasped. Out of instinct, he hid behind Jiang Shangyu. Death and eternal silence had just brushed past him at a very close distance. Everything about the Jiang family of South America had almost become history. Ups and downs, great surprise and great joy. Jiang Guochu's whole body kept trembling, and his eyes became a little dull. You should think about how you're going to survive first. Li Tianlan's calm voice rang out. Jiang Guochu's body trembled again when he heard it. Jiang Shangyu frowned slightly. His domain quickly spread out and completely covered Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan was motionless. The shadow transformed by the divine weapon, and the shadow transformed by the shadow formula. Dozens of shadows were almost everywhere on this battlefield, which could be called ghostly shadows. The shadows were not dead. Each shadow consciously adjusted its position under Li Tianlan's will. He was not stingy with ruthless energy. With the last afterglow of ruthless, even in Jiang Shangyu's domain, his perception was still clear and sharp. The domain spread steadily. Within the scope of the domain, Jiang Shangyu did not feel anything unusual. Jiang Guochu's mentality seemed to have a huge problem, so that his attention was completely distracted. But Moraid, who had also just brushed shoulders with death, was full of fighting spirit. More than a dozen superiors of the half-step invincible realm, whom Li Tianlan had not taken seriously just now, were gathering quickly. In the air above the domain, the sword energy overlapped. Li Guangtu's body became incomparably illusory in the sword energy, but the illusory sword energy also locked on Li Tianlan. The backup force of Mount Dibing's Heaven Punishment Troop was nothing to worry about. Wang Shengxiao was nothing to worry about. Ruthless energy had been bottomed out. 3 prohibitions. Ruthless resolved the incomparably huge attack at that moment, but it did not cause any harm to them. They only consumed a part of their physical strength. But Li Tianlan had lost Ruthless now, leaving only more than a dozen shadows of Xianyuan Feng. They had lost 2 superiors of the invincible realm, which was indeed a heavy loss. But under such circumstances, facing Li Tianlan, they could almost be said to have an absolute advantage. Deliberately mystifying, Jiang Shangyu looked at Li Tianlan with no expression on his face. This landscape will bury you together, so you won't feel wronged. Ha, Li Tianlan laughed. His sword energy rushed out of Mount Dibing, mixed with the wind and snow, crossed the stage of formidable person, and rushed into Beihai. He did not understand the law of Sword Tao. But just now, with the cooperation of Ruthless, when he tried his best to prohibit the sword light and the domain, he suddenly noticed a subtle but almost ubiquitous sword energy. Compared with the incomparably vast sword energy he had just felt in the air, this sword energy was clearer and more real. The most important thing was that even with the cooperation of Ruthless, he could prohibit all the sword light and the domain, but he still could not affect this sword energy that had existed for an unknown period of time. The sword energy had been increasing. The speed was not fast, but it was extremely stable. Li Tianlan finally understood the meaning of Wang Xingxiao's words. Worryless was not in Mount Dibing. He was in Beihai. The so-called Beihai was not Beihai province. It was the Beihai behind the stage of formidable person of Mount Dibing, the boundless sea of Beihai. This was the sword energy that Li Tianlan had been waiting for. He did not expect that in the shortest time, he had reached a certain tacit understanding with the two brothers of Beihai at the same time. He looked at Jiang Shangyu with cold eyes, with incomparably firm killing intent. Jiang Shangyu took a step forward. Boom! The night sky, which was scattered by the wind and snow, seemed to be torn apart by Jiang Shangyu at this moment. The space within a radius of thousands of meters was completely broken. Jiang Shangyu stretched out his palm, and countless black thunderbolts suddenly appeared within thousands of meters. The completely violent thunderbolts bared their fangs and brandished their claws, rushing directly to Li Tianlan. The battlefield in Mount Dibing was completely chaotic. In the chaotic void, the sword energy of nothingness turned into the most thorough reality in an instant. Li Guangtu's figure appeared again. He made a gesture with both hands. The ninth sky was endless. This was another change of the 24 moves of sword, a unique skill that simulated other unique skills. This time, what the expressionless Li Guangtu simulated was Li Tianlan's kendo, cutting the sky, breaking the sea, shattering style. One after another, the sword light illuminated the endless black thunderbolts. In the void domain, neither Li Guangtu nor Jiang Shangyu held back. More than a dozen top experts of the half-step invincible realm joined forces again. But this time it was no longer an attack. Everyone's aura was connected into one in an instant. Everyone's sword energy, strength and willpower were constantly superimposed. Moraid's pupils had completely turned into pure silver white. He walked out from behind Jiang Shangyu, and perfectly integrated with the power of more than a dozen experts of the half-step invincible realm. His aura temporarily increased wildly in an instant, directly crossing the threshold of the peak of the invincible realm, and stopping at the peak of the invincible realm. This was the unique skill of the Holy Zone. It could also be said to be the most powerful unique skill of the Holy Zone in the state of coronation, pure faith. At this moment, more than a dozen experts of the half-step invincible realm gathered almost all their power together, and temporarily lent it to Moraid. The extremely powerful aura burst out from every corner. Jiang Shangyu, Li Guangtu, Moraid. Siege. It was the highest standard siege in this era. At this moment, they had no other opponents in their eyes except Li Tianlan. Mount Dibing shook violently. A few kilometers away from Mount Dibing, the night trembled slightly. A figure with torn clothes and blood all over his body suddenly walked out of the trembling night. Before his body landed, he coughed violently and spat out mouthfuls of blood. Wang Xiaoyao's face was as pale as paper, and his aura had almost fallen to the bottom. But compared to the most dangerous moment just now, he was still alive. Wang Yuesong couldn't stop his saber. He couldn't stop Wang Yuesong's sword either. So at the moment when they were about to die together, Wang Xiaoyao withdrew from the battlefield. Almost no one noticed his movement, except Li Tianlan. Because what Wang Xiaoyao used was the unique technique that he had traded with Sword of Emperor Path from Li Tianlan. Shadow Formula. The incomplete version of Shadow Formula. Wang Xiaoyao's shadow was not aggressive, but it could change positions with him. No one knew if this day had been planned for a long time. In short, at that moment, Shadow Formula completely solved Wang Xiaoyao's situation. Li Tianlan, who was extremely sensitive to shadows, found something wrong at the first time, and entered the battlefield directly. Wang Xiaoyao didn't want to die. He didn't want to die together. Li Tianlan didn't want Wang Yuesong to die either. So at the moment when Wang Xiaoyao and the shadow changed positions, Li Tianlan appeared beside Wang Yuesong. He didn't know if this could be regarded as a tacit understanding between him and Li Tianlan. But what happened in that instant just now and the result of it undoubtedly satisfied both sides. Wang Xiaoyao laughed. His shadow formula came from Li Tianlan. He believed that Li Tianlan could feel his movement. And the result now, Li Tianlan didn't let him down. In the night, he managed to stand up straight and looked at the chaotic Mount Dibbing in the distance. That battlefield might still need his strength, but he had no intention of participating in it. No one knew the outcome of this battle, but Wang Xiaoyao was keenly aware of the danger contained in it. Win or lose, he muttered to himself and shook his head slightly. He had done everything he could. He suppressed Wang Yuesong and created a great opportunity for Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu. As for now, Wang Xiaoyao looked down at his watch. Blood had dyed the dial red, but the needle was still moving tenaciously. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, Beihai time. The sky was still dark. Wang Xiaoyao took a deep breath and turned to leave. Chapter 1019. Black was not the night. The deep darkness surged and spread wildly on Mount Dibbing. The night was completely torn apart by his hands. The endless black thunderbolts, like a black tide, occupied the entire battlefield in an incomparably domineering manner. It was not only an all-out fight, but also a life-and-death fight. Jiang Shangyu's aura completely changed the moment he attacked. His eyes seemed to have lost the last bit of warmth, and became extremely cold and crazy. The few allies were completely covered by his domain. The next second, the black thunderbolts, like a black tide, suddenly twisted. All the sounds seemed to be completely swallowed up. The moment the thunderbolts twisted, dozens of reserve forces of the All Heavens troops on the edge of the battlefield, who had not had time to withdraw, turned into nothingness in the thunderbolts on the spot. The flat ground was disintegrating rapidly. The buildings collapsed silently, and the plants withered completely. The black thunderbolts twisted with the absolute power of destruction, destroying everything in the area they covered. The domain shook wildly. The black thunderbolts kept coming out of the broken space, and there were more and more of them. They were boundless and silent. Jiang Shangyu, whose eyes turned scarlet almost in an instant, strode toward Li Tianlan. For the first time, weapons appeared in his hands. Even when he challenged Li Tianlan to a duel in Tiannan, he had never revealed his weapons. They were not swords, daggers, or daggers. Jiang Shangyu's weapons turned out to be a pair of extremely ferocious silver arm guards. 2 arm guards that perfectly fit Jiang Shangyu's arms were buckled on his hands, wrapping from his fingers to his shoulders. One by one, ferocious barbs came out of the arm guards. The silver-white arm guards shone with a faint light. They were extremely soft and tough, changing at will with Jiang Shangyu's movements. Countless black thunderbolts burst out mightily under the pull of the silver arm guards, drowning and destroying everything. The darkness was turbulent, and the light was shining. As the person with the lowest actual combat capability on the scene, Moraid's movements were even more violent than Jiang Shangyu's. The unique skill Pure Faith, which had been passed down by the Vatican for hundreds of years, was not a taboo, but few people had used it for hundreds of years. Naturally, there were drawbacks and many restrictions. First of all, this unique skill required extremely high physical strength. The invincible realm was just the beginning. Under normal circumstances, the real peak of the invincible realm was the best choice. Secondly, the biggest drawback of Pure Faith was that it would cause people to lose most of their rationality. At the same time, Moraid received the impact of the power of nearly 20 top experts of the half-step invincible realm. If he wanted to bear this, he needed not only an extremely strong body, but also an absolutely tough spirit. The spiritual crown of the sanctuary made him barely able to accept all this. But the power of more than 10 top experts of the half-step invincible realm poured into his body, and the power that was almost out of control crazily hit every blood vessel and muscle in his body. Although the severe pain didn't make Moraid collapse, it had already made him completely crazy. The moment the black thunderbolt appeared, he roared and rushed to Li Tianlan's side. The deathly still black and the pure white shone together. In the dazzling light and shadow, transparent sword qi penetrated the light and darkness one after another, silently stabbing Li Tianlan's vital parts all over his body. The sword energy was not very eye-catching, but the sharp killing intent in it was even more exaggerated than the black thunderbolts that Jiang Shangyu had triggered all over the sky. At this moment, Mount Dibbing was the real peak of the dark world, and the real peak of this era. While he was in a trance, scenes flashed through his mind, from small to large, as if he was looking at flowers on horseback. Li Tianlan still remembered when he picked up a sword for the first time when he was a child. At that time, Li Honghe was still in his peak state, but the great pressure made his back slightly bent, and he was no longer in his prime. It was a very ordinary summer in the camp. The camp, which was covered by the dense woods, was stuffy. He held a wooden sword and aimed at the first opponent in his life, a poplar, again and again. As his guide on martial arts, Li Honghe demonstrated a simple forward stab 3 times, and then asked him if he saw it clearly. At that time, little Tianlan nodded innocently, holding the sword, and imitating his grandfather's movements again and again. That year, little Tianlan was 4 years old. For 2 years he kept repeating that sword, 10,000 times, 100,000 times, hundreds of thousands of times. His body was overdrawn, his shoulders were swollen, and his arms were cramped. The evaluation he got was always the same. Not fast enough, not simple enough, no power. That sword, the most basic forward stab, Li Tianlan practiced for 2 years. On the day of his 6th birthday, when Li Tianlan directly pierced the thick ancient tree in front of him with a wooden sword, he saw the map of God of War of the Li family for the first time. Do you know who we are? We are a group of people who can't control their own destiny. My hand can still hold the sword, but I'm old, and I can't control my destiny. Tianlan, I may be too strict with you. You are my grandson, the future master of the Li family, and this identity can't be changed. I hope that your hand can not only hold the sword, but also hold the destiny of the Li family. And your own destiny. The picture kept changing. With the balance chapter as the foundation, Li Tianlan first came into contact with the invincible chapter, the taboo of martial arts of the Li family, at the age of 8. He began to meditate at the age of 9, trying to enter the 4 realms of martial arts. Just after his 10th birthday, Li Tianlan entered the qi-controlling realm for the first time. From then on, martial arts progressed rapidly. He entered the ice-condensing realm at the age of 12, and his realm was suppressed by Li Honghe to hone his sword energy. He entered the fire-flaming realm at the age of 15. 17 years old, peak of the fire-flaming realm. At the age of 17 he met Thunder God of the Dongqing clan for the first time, and was led to the desert prison by him. Fireman, fighting, entered the thunder-shocking realm, then destroyed his realm and recultivated in the qi-controlling realm. 19 years old, ice-condensing realm, Sky Academy. Qin Weibai, Wang Yuetong, East Emperor Palace. The final battle of Heaven Capital, Dongqing Rushi trekking thousands of miles, wind and snow filled the sky of the polar region. Half-step invincible realm. The chaos of the snow country, the day of judgment, the day of termination, all of it was vigorous and vigorous. Until today, until now. Li Kuangtu, Jiang Shangyu and Moraid. The pinnacle of martial arts. Li Tianlan was 24 years old. In the blink of an eye, it had been 5 years since he left the Li family and came to Huading. The scenes of the past were so clear to him. Invincible in the world, #1 in the world. Now for the first time, he truly stood at the peak of the dark world. What greeted him was overwhelming thunderbolts, violent and hidden sword energy, and sharp and dazzling light. Everything was the scenery at the peak. Li Tianlan suddenly felt a little lonely. This night was his new peak, but it was also a new beginning. The entangled and changing light and shadow arrived in an instant. He pulled out the sword. The huge blade of Xian Yuanfeng suddenly turned over in Li Tianlan's hand. All of a sudden, a colorful radiance lit up. Ruthless had almost no energy, so the dazzling sword light at present undoubtedly came from Li Tianlan. A rainbow suddenly lit up in the shining black and white. The rainbow in the air turned into a natural circle, and then instantly shrank. The colorful halo that shrank to the extreme completely protected Li Tianlan. In the silent black thunderbolts, Xian Yuanfeng's sword body was light. It trembled slightly. In an instant, Li Tianlan's figure appeared directly in front of Li Guangtu. "Watch carefully," Li Tianlan said lightly. He held Xian Yuanfeng in one hand, and made a seal with the other hand. Boom! There was a sudden loud noise in the silent and broken space. The black thunderbolts that attacked Li Tianlan crazily were completely shattered in an instant, and the colorful sword light suddenly broke out. Ninth emptiness and infinity. This was one of the strongest unique skills that Li Guangtu created after studying the 24 moves of sword. The most powerful thing was that it could imitate and copy other people's sword energy. This unique skill could be said to be the core move of the immortality seal. But now Li Tianlan made a seal with one hand, and it was also ninth emptiness and infinity. But what he imitated was not Li Guangtu's sword energy. Li Guangtu's face suddenly changed. His figure instantly changed from real to nothingness. His figure flickered and retreated quickly. His face was tense, but there was a touch of absurdity in his eyes. What Li Tianlan used was his unique skill. He recognized it at first glance. But the ninth emptiness and infinity in Li Tianlan's hand made him feel familiar and strange. Li Tianlan's ninth emptiness and infinity imitated Li Guangtu's ninth emptiness and infinity. Li Guangtu couldn't understand this kind of operation in a short time. He didn't even know what it would simulate. But the next second, the flying sword energy directly gave him the most direct answer. He simulated Li Tianlan's swordsmanship. Heaven-cutting move, shattering move, sea-breaking move. The connection between several sword energy and him was directly out of control. The hidden and sharp sword energy instantly bloomed with colorful light. The sword energy crossed the sky and rushed directly to Li Guangtu without any pause. The sword energy was out of control? Li Guangtu was at a loss for a moment. In his sight, Li Tianlan's figure had rushed directly to his side with the sword energy. Unparalleled move. Several sword energy directly merged with Xian Yuanfeng the moment Li Tianlan raised his sword. A bolt of 7-colored lightning suddenly flashed in the chaotic night. The sword light was overwhelming. Clang! Li Guangtu suddenly reached out his hand. A piece of black metal slipped out of his sleeve. He swung his palm hard, and the black metal instantly extended. 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters. In the blink of an eye, a huge black sickle with a length of more than 3 meters appeared in Li Guangtu's hand. The sickle kept waving against the wind in the night. Li Guangtu's figure rotated like the wind, and the hysterical edge continuously chopped on the colorful sword light in front of him. Boom! The sword light was chopped into pieces. The colorful light flowed everywhere, illuminating the entire Mount Dibing. The shadow on Mount Dibing was moving. Li Tianlan took a step and appeared directly behind Li Guangtu. "Playing the 24 moves of sword of the Li family in front of me?" Li Tianlan's voice was cold and gloomy. "You're far from it." A dim yellow light suddenly lit up. All the sword energy completely condensed into one point. The ninth blade of dusk. Dusk broke the burning sky. Xian Yuanfeng suddenly collided with the rotating sickle. Li Guangtu's body shook violently. He gritted his teeth and finally said the first words of the night. "Are you also a member of the Li family?" "Just a bastard." The dragon roar suddenly rose to the sky. Azure dragon arrow, azure dragon cannon, flying dragon in the sky, dragon fighting in the wild. The violent power and sword energy surged wildly. Li Tianlan and Li Guangtu collided countless times in an instant. The same dragon fist. The same body movement. The same way of exerting force. In hundreds of years, this was almost the highest level of civil war in the Li family. Forward, forward, forward. Attack, attack, attack. Ruthlessness was ever-changing. Once again, it became a cloak that protected Li Tianlan's whole body. The corners of his clothes flew. In the shortest time, in a head-on fight, Li Guangtu was almost completely suppressed. He had not officially entered the invincible realm, but the frequency of his attacks was even faster. The dual wind and thunder veins greatly made up for his lack of strength. The endless vitality of the dragon vein could even allow him to slightly overdraw his body at any time. In this state, Li Tianlan was fully qualified to suppress Li Guangtu. The moment Li Guangtu fell into a disadvantageous position, the black thunderbolt swept over again. Li Tianlan's figure flashed away in an instant. Boom! The light and sword energy broke out at the same time. Dozens of meters away, Li Tianlan had completely smashed Moraid out. Jiang Shangyu suddenly turned back. The clenched fist passed from behind. Bang! The silver arm guard collided with the fist. The next second, Xianyuan Feng brought the sword light all over the sky and smashed on the arm guard like a storm. The moment the sparks flew out, Li Guangtu's figure was once again suppressed by Li Tianlan. Yes, the indifferent voice drifted in the air, and countless punches and kicks broke out in front of Moraid without warning. The infinite pure light collided with the fierce dragon fist, and Moraid's body flew out. Puff! In the dull sound, the bodies of the two superiors of the half-step invincible realm below were shattered into pieces of flesh on the spot by the huge force. The black thunderbolt surged. The colorful halo of sword energy rotated wildly, and Li Tianlan's body directly smashed the thunderbolt all over the sky. The sound of the arm guard and the long sword colliding brought about a lingering sound. There was already a large piece of flying snow in front of Li Guangtu. You have a chance. The bodies of the two superiors of the half-step invincible realm below collapsed again. Moraid's breath began to weaken, and he was trying to get closer to Jiang Shangyu. In his sight, Li Tianlan was still fighting with Moraid, and in his ears was the sound of the long sword colliding with the arm guard. The violent attack was right in front of him. The night was chaotic, and the snow was flying all over the sky. The extreme coldness with sword intent crazily shrouded him. Why not? Boom! The black thunderbolt that suddenly condensed directly protected Moraid. Li Tianlan's figure appeared in front of Jiang Shangyu. A small domain exploded in an instant. Cherish? Crack! The colorful light suddenly burst out, and the sword energy was like a rainbow. In an instant, it collided with the black scythe countless times. Blood burst out of the perlicue. In the clear pane, the scythe that was more than 3 meters long was completely cut off. The rainbow-like sword light was dazzling, flashing wildly, spinning, and the sword energy soared into the sky, wantonly and majestic. The endless sharpness directly smashed the thunderbolt around Moraid. The sword edge toward the domain, and the sword energy cut off Moraid's chest armor. Jiang Shangyu's figure suddenly retreated in the sudden attack. Where's your pride? The sharp and condensed sword energy suddenly burst out on the half of Li Guangtu's scythe. Direct, crisp, and simple. Forward stab. The sword energy shone, shattering mountains and rivers. Clang! The sharp sword energy directly stabbed on the huge sword edge of Xianyuan Feng. The half of the scythe was completely broken. Blood flowed down from Li Tianlan's body, and his aura became more and more terrifying. Thunder! Li Guangtu, who lent me the sword in Ji City. Bang! The armor was broken, and the domain surrounded him. The domain was broken. Moraid's body was sent flying dozens of meters away by a punch, and a large amount of blood suddenly dripped down through the pure light. The domain that broke out on its own completely swallowed Li Tianlan. He waved the sword and swept it across. Like the sky and the sea, Li Tianlan's movements were extremely concise, and his every move carried an indescribable tension. The sword edge cut through the space, and the broken domain, driven by the sword energy, swept back to Jiang Shangyu. Li Guangtu's figure flashed and he quickly retreated. But the voice followed him like a shadow. Did you die in Mormons? What's left of your pride and dignity? Boom! The colorful sword light shattered the sword energy around Li Guangtu. The huge sword edge cut across Li Guangtu's chest. The void was broken, and the night was boiling. Li Tianlan stopped and quietly looked at Li Guangtu, who was retreating, and said calmly, "What are you holding on for?" Crack! The domain condensed crazily, and the black thunderbolts were dense, surrounding the entire domain. Moraid, Jiang Shangyu, and Li Guangtu finally met and stood together. Li Tianlan let out a long breath and moved his body slightly. His face was pale, and his body was bleeding everywhere. A faint white mist wrapped him up. He looked at the opponents in front of him, and his eyes became sharper. Jiang Shangyu and the other two made the same action almost at the same time. The 3 super experts, who now represented the peak combat capability of the Dark World, shook their heads at the same time. They were dazzled. Li Tianlan was alone. But in less than a few seconds, the three of them seemed to be facing Li Tianlan at the same time. Fast. Incredibly fast. It was also incredibly weird. The shadow formula was fully exerted in Li Tianlan's hands to the extent that even Tribulation, the original creator, couldn't exert it. More than 20 shadows kept flashing. At the extreme speed, Li Tianlan's figure could appear anywhere at will. His speed was so fast that it even exceeded the reaction speed of Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu, so that in just a few seconds, the three of them were almost facing 3 Li Tianlans at the same time. At this moment, even Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu felt a little numb, not to mention Moraid, whose aura began to decline. This was like an exaggerated and somewhat weird solo show. Li Tianlan's figure flashed wildly, and his absolute speed even allowed his body to appear in different places at the same time. The instantaneous change left the three of them no room to fight back. Li Tianlan was also injured. But the vast white mist wrapped his body, and his injury was recovering at a speed almost visible to the naked eye. Cough, 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 cough. Moraid, whose face was pale, coughed violently, and blood gushed out of his mouth. His voice was hoarse and laborious. Your Majesty. He has consumed a lot of physical strength. Even if he can recover from his injury, he can't recover his physical strength. We can consume. Consume, Jiang Shangyu murmured to himself. In just a few seconds, he and Li Guangtu were both injured. Although the injuries were not serious, this scene was extremely disturbing. Li Tianlan's fighting style undoubtedly consumed a lot of physical strength. The most important thing was that although his combat capability surpassed the peak of the invincible realm, and was only one step or even half a step away from the real supreme realm, Li Tianlan's body was directly at the half-step invincible realm. His physical strength could never support him for a long time. If not, he didn't need to stop at all. With the suppression power he showed just now, it would only take 5 or 6 seconds at most to kill Moraid, and more than a dozen half-step invincible realm experts on the ground. In another 10 seconds or so, he and Li Guangtu would also be seriously injured. But Li Tianlan stopped. Obviously, his physical strength had begun to decline. If he continued, he might reveal his flaws. Li Tianlan couldn't bear such consumption. But could the three of them really bear it? Jiang Shangyu took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Let's go together." They were not scattered. The three of them were closely connected. Together. Ha! Li Tianlan laughed with no expression on his face. Have you forgotten something? He said lightly. Jiang Shangyu frowned. Another voice came from another direction. It was calm, but it was filled with doubt. Since when did someone dare to ignore the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai in Mount Dibing? In an instant, Li Guangtu's and Jiang Shangyu's faces changed dramatically. They looked at Wang Shengxiao, who had landed on the stage of formidable person. In the dark, a piece of sword energy that could almost crush everything had begun to take shape quietly. Under the stage of formidable person, the remaining reserve forces of the all heavens began to gather quickly. Li Tianlan's figure suddenly flashed and appeared behind Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu. You will die here. Wang Shengxiao's calm and indifferent voice kept echoing in the night sky. The sword energy that seemed to be able to suppress everything gathered in a very distant place. It seemed to have a faint connection with Wang Shengxiao. Emperor Dong's palace is just our ally, Wang Shengxiao said softly. Your opponent is the Wang family of Beihai, the invincible Wang family of Beihai. The wind and snow drifted. There was a faint touch of dawn between heaven and earth. The uneasiness in his heart suddenly broke out. Jiang Shangyu pointed at Wang Shengxiao without hesitation and roared, "Kill him!" Moraid did not hesitate. His whole body drew a blazing white light in the air, and fiercely rushed to Wang Shengxiao. Wang Shengxiao raised his head and saw Moraid's figure getting closer and closer. After 2 years, the Dark World should take a look again, he said softly. Take a look at the sword of Beihai. Moraid's figure shuttled in the air. His powerful aura almost made Wang Shengxiao breathless. Under the great pressure, Wang Shengxiao suddenly straightened his body. His voice resounded between heaven and earth. Every word was surging and impassioned. The Wang family of Beihai. Accompanied by the wind and snow, the morning light, and the tide. His voice shook the alternating day and night. He shouted at the top of his lungs and swallowed thousands of miles. Draw your sword. Boom. The majestic sword energy instantly filled the entire Mount Dibing. Everyone in the All Heavens troop, including Wang Shengxiao, everyone drew their swords at the same time. The sword energy that suddenly gathered together was like an extremely clear coordinate. In an instant, the distant Beihai was completely boiling. Day and night alternated. When the morning light was about to come, Mount Dibing suddenly sprinkled a piece of extremely bright and cold silver light. In everyone's sight, on the distant boiling sea, the majestic sword energy roared and rushed to the sky. Under the flying snow, above the sea, a huge bright moon slowly rose from the sea. For a moment, it seemed to occupy all the light in the world. Chapter 10:20. The bright moon rose on the sea. The cold and bright light filled the world, quietly and softly sprinkling on Mount Dibing. Jiang Shangyu, Li Guangtu moreed. When everyone saw this scene, they were all stunned on the spot. The wind and snow over Beihai were getting wilder. The heavy snow was falling. The night was fading, and the morning light gradually shone. In the most impossible environment and the most impossible time, the moonlight sprinkled all over the earth without warning. Boom! The whole Beihai was turbulent. Huge waves surged, and the sea was turbulent. On the sea far away from Mount Dibing, the sea level within a radius of tens of thousands of meters suddenly began to rotate, and in the fastest time, it became a huge whirlpool. The sky and the sea shook at the same time. The roar echoed between heaven and earth. The loud roar was like the heartbeat of the sky, and the incredibly huge whirlpool on the sea was the breath of the sea. Wang Shengxiao once asked Xianming if he had ever seen the breath of the sea. No one had seen it. But at this time, everyone on Mount Dibing saw this scene. Thousands of hectares of seawater roared and rotated and shrank with an earth-shattering noise. Endless light sprayed out from the center of the whirlpool. Cold, calm, indifferent, and calm. The indescribable light constantly intertwined, forming an extremely pure silver plate. It was like a real bright moon, rising above the sea and rushing to the sky. The bright moon rose on the sea. Jiang Shangyu's body gradually became stiff. Li Guangtu was silent. Moraid was a little confused. Standing behind the three of them, Li Tianlan hovered in midair, gazing at the boiling sea in the distance. His eyes narrowed slightly, and a fanatical fighting spirit burned in the depths of his eyes. After watching for a while, he shook his head regretfully. The bright moon on the sea kept rising. It shone on the sea, the earth, and the night sky. The bright moon in the flying snow was round and bright, almost perfect. The sea level shook violently, and the monstrous waves became more and more turbulent. There seemed to be only the earth-shattering tide, and the clear light that illuminated the world left in the world. Jiang Shangyu's stiff body trembled. He sucked in a breath of cold air. The bright moon had jumped out of the sea and hung high in the sky. Without any hesitation, all the unwillingness, regret, and anger were completely restrained. He didn't have the time to count his losses. Jiang Shangyu's domain directly covered everyone around him. His voice was urgent and solemn. Go. Yes, let's go. The most direct meaning of this word in this situation was to retreat. All his fighting spirit had completely disappeared. Jiang Shangyu couldn't care about anything else. It was a bright moon that leaped out of the sea. The light that changed heaven and earth. Everything looked so pure. But when he felt it carefully, Jiang Shangyu felt a subtle, but ubiquitous sword intent. He no longer thought about the outcome of the decisive battle in the North Sea. There was no time to think. An intense sense of danger rose from his heart the moment the moon appeared, frantically warning him. Jiang Shangyu turned around with no expression on his face. He stepped forward. He lifted his foot and dropped it again. He landed in midair. At this moment, Jiang Shangyu really took a step. It was less than a meter. Jiang Shangyu's face suddenly changed dramatically. Li Guangtu's face also became somewhat gloomy and ugly. If an expert who had surpassed the peak of the invincible realm wanted to retreat, he could appear a kilometer away in one step. But now Jiang Shangyu's step was just one step. The bright moon shone on heaven and earth. Under the clear light, the space between heaven and earth seemed to completely solidify and become extremely solid. Jiang Shangyu's domain was forcibly compressed under the illumination of the clear light. Jiang Shangyu, with a cold face, took another step forward. One step was just one step. The boundless clear light didn't restrict his freedom, but it forcibly suppressed his domain and speed. Your Majesty, how? Moraid finally realized that something was wrong. He subconsciously wanted to ask Jiang Shangyu what to do. But before he finished speaking, he suddenly raised his head. In his sight, the bright moon hanging high in the sky was shining and instantly becoming bigger. The morning light spread, and the bright moon flowed. Endless clear light gushed out unscrupulously in the air. In an instant, a beam of light that penetrated everything appeared in the sky and on the ground. The beam of light fell directly on Mount Dibing. Crack! Jiang Shangyu's domain, which had been compressed to the extreme, was instantly torn apart. The extreme sharpness swept through everything. It was the sword energy, heaven and earth, and the whole world. The whole world seemed to have become an invincible divine weapon at this moment. The domain, which even Li Tianlan could hardly break in a short time, was as fragile as a piece of white paper under the light and was instantly broken. Jiang Guochu, who stood in front of Moraid, did not even scream. The body of the new patriarch of the Jiang family of South America was directly cut into a bloody mist. Blood flew everywhere. A large amount of blood burst out from Li Guangtu, Jiang Shangyu, and Moraid at the same time. On the ground, more than a dozen experts at the peak of the invincible realm were directly smashed into pieces without saying a word. The sky was bloody mist. Moraid's aura directly fell to the bottom. Blood was spurting all over his body, and the sound of bones breaking kept ringing in his body. At the moment when the infinite sharpness was about to penetrate his body completely, Jiang Shangyu, whose face was pale, suddenly stretched out his palm. He clenched his fist. A new domain appeared in front of the three of them in an instant. The moment the domain appeared, it was completely torn apart by the sharpness in heaven and earth. The space in front of Jiang Shangyu was constantly twisting. Another domain was formed, and then it collapsed without any pause. 30-meter mortal world. This was his strongest defensive means now. The domain of less than 15 meters was completely unbreakable. Even he, the person involved, could not cancel the 30-meter mortal world in a short time after using it. During the battle in Tiannan, even Li Tianlan did not have a way to completely break the 30-meter mortal world in a short time. But now, in the spreading clear brilliance, the 30-meter mortal world was broken twice in a row, and it did not even last for a second. Jiang Shangyu's body was shaking wildly. The 30-meter mortal world was thrown out again and again. This was the strongest unique skill that condensed all the strength of his body. Every time it was torn by the clear brilliance, his body seemed to be ravaged by endless sword light. Blood dripped, and his internal injury continued to worsen. It seemed that something had completely broken in the dark. His abundant physical strength began to be consumed at an incredible speed. In the blink of an eye, it reached the bottom. Then it was overdraft at all costs. The 30-meter mortal world kept appearing again and again. Li Guangtu was also doing his best. His hands kept making gestures. His martial arts came from the 24 moves of sword, which mainly focused on swordsmanship. In the immortality seal, there was only one move similar to the domain effect, which was called the Cage of Heaven and Earth. However, this move was now completely like a joke in the clear brilliance all over the sky. The 30-meter mortal world and the Cage of Heaven and Earth kept appearing, but they were completely torn in an instant. The bright moon hung high in the sky, and the clear light flowed. Pieces of light continued to fall down, hitting the domains of Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu. The clear light spread, and it seemed that nothing could stop it for a second. Death. This word was so clearly placed in front of Li Guangtu and Jiang Shangyu. Death was close at hand, and it was impossible to avoid. They did not know what the bright moon in the sky was, but they knew what the clear light they were facing now was. There were thousands of clear lights, and every trace and every wisp was sword energy. The sword energy was extremely pure but exploding to the extreme. This was the real supreme swordsmanship. It was not close to it, but it had really stepped into that level of swordsmanship. Sword of 6 Paths of Reincarnation. Sword of 6 Paths of Reincarnation from the Wang family of Beihai. Whether it was Jiang Shangyu or Li Guangtu, there was a clear trace of fear in their eyes at this moment. With such a clear sword qi and such a unique realm, they could only think of one person. Wang Tianzong, the sword emperor of Zhongzhou state. But how could he recover from his injury? The light was like a tide, surging layer by layer. An equally fierce sharpness burst out behind him in an instant. The world became quiet in an instant. The clear brilliance all over the sky was entangled. Behind Jiang Shangyu, Li Tianlan had already raised his sword edge. The forever silent world. The colorful light rushed into the clear brilliance all over the sky. Countless colors shone at the same time. The domain of the 30-meter mortal world was completely broken. The cage of heaven and earth disappeared in an instant. The power and sword energy that Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu burst out with all their strength were completely melted. The light flew in the flying snow. The forever silent world and the 6 paths of reincarnation merged with each other, and the extreme destructive power completely enveloped Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu. Puff! A large mouthful of blood, along with all the pieces of internal organs, sprayed directly from Li Guangtu's mouth. Ah! Jiang Shangyu roared like a beast, and the infinite light completely drowned his body. His bunker suddenly stiffened for a moment. Blood sputtered from all corners of his body. Jiang Shangyu's eyes became fierce and resentful. He seemed to have made up his mind, and his whole body shook fiercely. Boom! A dull clap of thunder suddenly rang out in the silent world. The incomparably firm space was completely shattered by him. A bit of extreme darkness appeared around him and rapidly expanded. In the shortest time, it directly swallowed the clear brilliance and the colorful sword energy all over the sky. Jiang Shangyu's aura continued to decline. When he was about to faint, the bit of darkness around him was completely formed, and the domain expanded for a moment. He grabbed Li Guangtu and Moraid, and the 3 figures instantly disappeared in the light and shadows all over the sky. All of this happened in less than a second. Crack! The domain of darkness was broken again. The figures of Jiang Shangyu and the others had disappeared from Mount Dibing. Li Tianlan put away the Xianyuan blade, and instinctively turned to chase after them. But as soon as his body moved, he froze on the spot. The cold obscurity that covered Mount Dibing kept surging, and the strong and sharp aura seemed to be quietly aimed at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan slowly turned around and looked at the silver light between heaven and earth, expressionless. The shadows on Mount Dibing disappeared one after another. All the divine weapons began to merge with the Xianyuan blade. The sword formation of the 13-story building reappeared, and the Xianyuan blade turned into a black cloak, completely covering Li Tianlan's body. Li Tianlan stood where he was without any expression. He put down Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu, and let go of all his thoughts. Now he just stared at the endless brilliance in front of him, and the bright moon hanging in the sky with great concentration. The brilliance that covered Mount Dibing suddenly began to shrink. Li Tianlan was motionless. The brilliance surged around him. The clear brilliance all over the sky kept gathering in the direction of the stage of formidable person. The bright moon was still hanging high. Countless brilliance finally turned into an extremely pure sword energy. The sword energy fell on the stage of formidable person, and slowly outlined a somewhat illusory figure. Wang Shengxiao watched the scene quietly. The figure on the stage of formidable person took shape and stood beside Wang Shengxiao. The eyes of the new patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai instantly turned red. He gritted his teeth, but his voice was still trembling and choking with sobs. "Dad!" Under the stage of formidable person, there were only dozens of reserve members of the All Heavens troop left kneeling on one knee at the same time. Their voices shook the night sky. "Your Majesty!" The fully formed figure became clearer, more and more stable, and more real. Li Tianlan saw it clearly. At this moment, the figure standing beside Wang Shengxiao was the figure of Wang Tianzong. Li Tianlan was looking at him. He was also looking at Li Tianlan in silence. Sharp brilliance shone in the night sky. The flying snow was drifting, and the gradually brightening night sky was full of fierce killing intent. Slowly, Wang Tianzong's figure raised his palm. Li Tianlan sneered. Ruthlessness, which had almost no energy, fluttered in the wind and snow. Li Tianlan's incomparably cold voice sounded on Mount Dibing. "If you want to fight, just do it. If your real body is here, I will turn around and leave. But you? A streak of sword energy, who do you think you are?" Wang Tianzong was silent. His figure was clear, but it looked a little stiff. He was Wang Tianzong, but not Wang Tianzong. Wang Tianzong's injury was recovering very slowly, little by little. Tonight, What appeared on the stage of formidable person was a streak of Wang Tianzong's sword energy. Or rather, it was Wang Tianzong's sword energy doppelganger. With Worryless of Beihai as the carrier, he appeared on Mount Dibing. Li Tianlan thought that the two of them could easily kill Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu by joining hands. But he did not expect that in Wang Tianzong's eyes, he had become the most important threat. Wang Tianzong would rather let Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu go, just to target him? Li Tianlan's eyes became more and more gloomy. From this sword chi doppelganger, it could be seen that Wang Tianzong was in a very bad state at this time. This doppelganger used Worryless as a carrier, but it still seemed extremely stiff. Obviously, Wang Tianzong's consciousness was even a little muddled. Most of the credit should be given to Worryless for his sword chi to be able to exert the power of the Chosen One. In such a state, Wang Tianzong's strength could not be restored. At most, he could barely struggle on the line of life and death. Maybe he could recover. But to recover completely? It was almost equivalent to a fool's talk. After more than 2 years, Li Tianlan finally saw how horrible Mormon's eternal sword was from the side. Wang Tianzong's state at this time was enough to explain everything. Wang Tianzong slowly put down his palm. The bright moonlight in the sky flowed. Silently, Wang Tianzong's figure suddenly turned into the silver brilliance all over the sky. Countless cold rays of light drifted toward the sky, and finally merged with the bright moon in the sky. Li Tianlan squinted, took a deep look at the bright moon in the sky, and turned to look in the direction where Jiang Shangyu left. He took a deep breath, moved his feet slightly and stopped again. The full moon, which had absorbed the clear brilliance all over the sky, became bright again. Wisps of clear light were silently projected on Mount Dibing. The light continued to gather and turned into figures one after another. 1, 2, 3, 5 shadows. 5 different directions. They were all Wang Tianzong. 5 Wang Tianzong slowly surrounded Li Tianlan with him as the center. Li Tianlan's eyes seemed to have lost the last bit of warmth. He looked up at the bright moon in the sky and seemed to understand something. Wuyo Sword Emperor. The two sides had undoubtedly reached an agreement to some extent. Wuyo borrowed Wang Tianzong's sword intent, and Wang Tianzong borrowed Wuyo's energy. However, Wang Tianzong's current state was too poor. He could barely feel everything in the outside world with the projection of sword energy, but his main willpower was Wuyo. So Wuyo didn't care about the lives of Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu at all. It didn't matter if they died. Even if they ran away, it didn't matter. It wanted to keep Li Tianlan here. Only Li Tianlan. In other words, it was Li Tianlan's ruthlessness. One shadow after another was Wang Tianzong's sword energy. So Li Tianlan looked up at the moon above Mount Dibing. The one that Beihai had hidden for hundreds of years. Lin Fengting had always wanted to see, but he couldn't. The core of all murderous weapons, Wuyo of Beihai. It was the bright moon in the sky. Li Tianlan smiled. Heartless surged slightly from his body, separated, and fell into his hand. Xianyuan blade began to stretch slowly, no longer in the shape of a sword. A sky halberd that was nearly 3 meters long appeared in Li Tianlan's hand. He held the sky halberd hard in his hand and squinted at the 5 shadows around him. "Come on," he said calmly. Chapter 10:21. Wuyo hung high in the sky, and the clear light had completely shrouded Mount Dibing. In the hazy and bright light, the 5 shadows around Li Tianlan became clearer and more solid. There was an almost indescribably enormous will in the world. This will occupied the entire world, and it carried with it obvious doubt, fear, and a strong desire. Wuyo was alive. So the moment Li Tianlan approached Mount Dibing, he felt Wuyo's state at that time. Wuyo's state was no longer at its peak, but its degree of completeness was beyond Wuyo's imagination. Carefree Wuyo. They had different names, but if one traced back to the source, they were originally the same body, or in other words, the same creature, just that they had been split apart. Wuyo was the core, but not the complete core. There was still a part of the core in the Lin clan. Even so, in the face of Wuyo, Wuyo had an innate advantage. Because in Wuyo's will, the so-called Wuyo was its own body. Controlling one's own body was a piece of cake for any creature. Everyone's every move was to control their own body. Of course, no one would think about whether their arms had consciousness when they raised their hands. Since it was the core, it was the only consciousness. But after Wuyo arrived at Mount Dibbing, it really noticed that something was wrong. Wuyo's body was incredibly complete. This feeling was hard to describe. It was as if a person's soul had been separated from their body. After going through all kinds of hardships, the soul finally met the body and couldn't wait to fuse with it, only to find that their body had inexplicably grown 2 arms and some other organs. Although it was still a familiar body, it looked more powerful and domineering. Xianyuan Feng was originally incomparably complete. And in this case, compared with the complete Xianyuan Feng, Wuyo only had 1 less broken heart, but it had several more murderous weapons of this era. In theory, this was also Wuyo's body, but it had no direct connection with Wuyo. This problem was like whether the current Qin Weibai and the Qin Weibai of the Lin clan, or whether the current Jiang Shangyu and the sleeping Jiang Shangyu were the same person. They could be said to be the same person, but they could also be said to be not the same person. The most direct manifestation was that Worryless wanted to control his own body, but Wu Qing used several murderous weapons of this era to directly form a defense system to prevent Worryless from invading. In that state, Heartless already had the capital to fight against Carefree. If Li Tianlan joined the battle, Worryless did not have the confidence to win. So it directly left Mount Dibbing and entered Beihai. This was the second time Worryless had retreated. The first time was some time ago. After Heartless had fused a few murderous weapons, he directly flew from the Central Plains to the North Sea. Although Li Tianlan was not by Wu Qing's side that night, his aura was almost at its peak. Therefore, Worryless took a step back. Today was the second time. Wu Qing obviously felt something when he approached Mount Dibbing, but he didn't show anything. Compared with Wuyo, who was more active in thinking and more changeable in willpower, Wu Qing was quieter and more loyal. He had been silently guarding Li Tianlan. The 3 sword laws on Mount Dibbing completely changed the battle situation in an instant. All of Wu Qing's energy dropped to the bottom in an instant. Everything was in line with Worryless expectations. So with Wang Tianzong's sword energy, he jumped out of the sea, trying to control everything. As long as he swallowed Heartless, he could break through the special magnetic field confinement on Mount Dibbing. He would rush to the European continent to swallow Worryless immediately. When his body was complete again, he would leave here and get real freedom. Jiang Shangyu, Li Guangtu, Li Tianlan, what did all the grievances in the world have to do with him? All he wanted was freedom. The 5 figures of Wang Tianzong completely stabilized. Worryless seemed to be completely sure of Heartless' state. In an instant, all the fear and uneasiness disappeared completely. Absolute desire occupied everything. The huge willpower swept across the night sky. Under the flying snow, 5 figures rushed to Li Tianlan at the same time. He was not hostile to Li Tianlan, but he was not kind either. From the beginning to the end, he had never taken anyone seriously. What he wanted was only Heartless. Flashing and rushing, the clear brilliance all over the sky surged up and down, and the sword energy that had completely turned into a substance completely enveloped Li Tianlan. Before Li Tianlan's voice died away, 5 Wang Tianzong had appeared in front of Li Tianlan at the same time. Sword of Wang Dao. Sword of Emperor Path. Sword of Deceitful Tao. Sword of Heavenly Law. Sword of Holy Path. 5 listened to the sea. 5 different sword energy broke out in an instant from 5 directions. Li Tianlan suddenly raised the sky halberd in his hand. Violent, ostentatious, powerful. Li Tianlan's body stretched to the extreme in an instant, and the piercingly cold light tore the dawn in an instant. The powerful and crazy sky halberd directly hit the blade of the deceitful Taoist sword, which was the fastest. The long halberd suddenly deviated, and Wang Tianzong's figure was directly driven by the huge force to smash toward his other self. Sword of Wang Dao and deceitful Taoist sword collided with a loud bang. In the boiling sword intent, the crescent blades on both sides of the sky halberd stuck the blade of the sword of Holy Path. The long halberd rotated. As Li Tianlan moved forward, the long halberd fiercely pulled in his direction. At the moment when it brushed past the sword of Holy Path, the sky halberd broke out with all its strength and fiercely hit the blade of the sword of Heavenly Law. Li Tianlan, who had shadows, was hardly afraid of any form of siege. With Ruthless, he could have more than 20 shadows, and these shadows could appear in any corner within 1,000 meters or even thousands of meters. In this state, Unless there were tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of troops filling every corner where the shadows could appear and besieging Li Tianlan at all costs, a small-scale siege would not work on Li Tianlan at all. But in the face of Wuyo, Li Tianlan would only be a fool to split up Ruthless. In the case that Ruthless could not face the shadows as a whole, Li Tianlan was also not afraid of small-scale group battles. Sky Halberd. Since ancient times, among all the weapons, the heavenly halberd could be said to be the king of group battles. It was capable of both offense and defense. Regardless of whether it was for offense or defense, in a group battle, the heavenly halberd could be said to be unparalleled. Li Tianlan had been practicing swordsmanship since he was a child. But swordsmanship did not necessarily require the use of a sword. At this time, holding the sky halberd in his hand, he was invincible. His every move was also sharp and fierce to the extreme. Li Tianlan had been practicing martial arts since he was a child. In theory, he was good at all kinds of weapons, including sabers, swords, daggers, spears, sticks, and whips. Basically, he was good at all kinds of cold weapons. But among all the things he was good at, besides the sword, he was best at the sky halberd. Sharp, fierce, domineering, invincible, and invincible. In the frenzied sword intent, the sky halberd tore the sky. It swept, dismantled, lifted, and hooked. This was the most direct collision between sword chi and sword chi. Collision. Without the domain. Compared with Wuyo, Li Tianlan was strong in sword intent. Compared with Li Tianlan, Wuyo, who borrowed Wang Tianzong's sword chi, was strong in sword chi. Sword chi and sword intent offset each other. Sword light shone everywhere on Mount Dibing, but the most essential battle had become close combat. 1 against 5. 5 Wang Tianzong against 1 Li Tianlan. But just by looking at the situation, this so-called 1 against 5 was more like a complete chaotic battle from start to finish. The sky halberd whistled through the crowd, and the sword energy soared into the sky. With the sky halberd in his hand, Li Tianlan's every move was full of indescribable power and spirit. The crescent blades on both sides of the long halberd were almost used to the extreme. Every time Li Tianlan struck, he could always use the strength of his opponent to attack several other opponents. Mount Dibing was constantly shaking under the huge power and sword chi. Wuyo obviously noticed something. The 5 figures of Wang Tianzong suddenly blurred and disappeared in an instant. The bright moon hung high in the sky. The morning light of Beihai passed, ushering in the day. But even in the daytime, the bright moon on Mount Dibing was still shining. The cold light completely integrated with the morning light, and became more hidden. Li Tianlan, whose eyes were more and more fanatical, looked up at the bright moon in the sky. The sky halberd disappeared in his hand, and became Xianyuan blade again. The light began to gather. In the air, Wang Tianzong's figure became clear again. There was only one. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly and sneered. 5 shadows is your limit? 6 paths of reincarnation of Beihai, 1 shadow is missing. No matter how you perform, there will be flaws. Wang Tianzong, who appeared in the air, was silent. The huge willpower between heaven and earth was also calm. Li Tianlan's eyes gradually became cold. You can look at my shadow, he said slowly. 1 shadow after another appeared between heaven and earth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There were 9 in total. Including Li Tianlan, there were 10 Li Tianlans around Wang Tianzong in an instant. Li Tianlan raised the sword edge slightly. The other 9 Li Tianlans raised their palms at the same time. The sword intent was surging, natural and flawless. Wang Tianzong narrowed his eyes slightly. It was an extremely subtle movement. It was a movement that Wuyo could not do under normal circumstances. Li Tianlan's heart suddenly froze. Wang Tianzong, who was originally lifelike and real, seemed to be different at this moment. The feeling that looked real but in fact always seemed a little stiff and dull completely disappeared. As Wang Tianzong narrowed his eyes, his whole person carried a touch of unparalleled danger. That was the supreme majesty. He was no longer Wuyo. Wang Tianzong. This was the real Wang Tianzong. He who was in a daze suddenly seemed to have a brief moment of sobriety. He still did not speak or even hesitated. The moment his eyes locked on Li Tianlan, Wang Tianzong directly raised his palm. Boom. In an instant, heaven and earth were completely chaotic. The roar was like thunder. The space of tens of thousands of meters around Mount Dibbing was directly torn apart. The chaotic airflow of light turned into wisps of clear and agile sword energy. The majestic sword energy absorbed every ray of light around, integrated with the clear brilliance all over the sky, and integrated with the vigorous morning sun. The world in sight was completely occupied by the sword light and sword energy in an instant. Wang Tianzong's outstretched palm stiffened in the air for a moment. His movement was very slow, but it was extremely determined to press down on Li Tianlan slowly. Li Tianlan's pupils completely contracted to the extreme. He was completely sure of the other party's identity. This was definitely not Wuyo. Wuyo borrowed Wang Tianzong's sword energy. The relationship between the two was already close to integration. So when Wang Tianzong temporarily sobered up, the primary and secondary relationship was instantly reversed. At this moment, Wang Tianzong was using his sword energy to borrow Wuyo's energy. Supreme and supreme. Even if he was seriously injured, even if he was in a daze, even if Wuyo was not complete. But this strike was still the supreme sword strike of the Chosen One. 6 Paths of Reincarnation Sword. It was the almost perfect 6 Paths of Reincarnation Sword. The sword light was endless, occupying everything and rushing to Li Tianlan at the same time. The sky and the sea seemed to fall and rise at the same time, squeezing and destroying everything. Li Tianlan took a deep breath, and the 9 shadows became extremely real in an instant. Li Tianlan's figure suddenly began to become illusory. Just now there were 9 shadows of him. But now it seemed that there were 9 shadows of Li Tianlan. Xianyuan Feng vibrated wildly in his hand at an unprecedented frequency. Facing the tide of sword energy that seemed to be able to destroy the whole world, Li Tianlan held the sword with both hands and suddenly raised Xianyuan Feng in his hand. Heaven and earth exploded. Li Tianlan and the 9 shadows took action at the same time. Chopping forward. Li Tianlan's aura fluctuated greatly. The moment he fell from the chi-controlling realm, he directly rushed to the peak of the thunder-shocking realm, and then suddenly entered the half-step invincible realm. The colorful sword light flashed wildly in the transparent light all over the sky, flashing thousands of times in an instant. This time it was not thunder but sword energy. The sword energy was pure and perfect to the extreme. The bright day turned into night in an instant. The bright moon hung high in the sky. Wuyo became more and more dazzling and cold in the darkness. The wildly twisted and vibrating sword energy suddenly collided with the constantly flying sword light. Mount Dibbing completely disappeared in an instant. The palace, the jungle, the flowers, the highway, everything was completely shattered by the collision of the sword light. The huge Mount Dibbing was razed to the ground in an instant. The sword light that occupied the sky kept colliding and tearing everything apart. Light and darkness intertwined and nothingness and reality changed. The figures of Li Tianlan and Wang Tianzong appeared and disappeared in the constantly flashing light. The world seemed to become a staggered picture. Every time Li Tianlan and Wang Tianzong disappeared and reappeared, they did different movements and positions. The sword light collided wildly, and the figures of the two seemed to be completely imprinted in heaven and earth at this moment. Mount Dibbing completely became the past. The thousands of sword chi clashing noiselessly came to an abrupt halt. Li Tianlan and Wang Tianzong still stood where they were. Boom! The endless waves completely rushed up to the sky, and the sky was turbulent. The moment when countless sword energy disappeared, an earth-shattering sound suddenly rang between heaven and earth. Wang Tianzong glanced at Li Tianlan. His figure instantly dissipated and collapsed. Puff! A large mouthful of blood and pieces of internal organs directly spurted out of Li Tianlan's mouth. The endless white mist slowly spread. It completely wrapped his body in it. High up in the sky, the bright moon was still shining, and the endless light once again surged toward Li Tianlan. Young master. In the helicopter, Xing Tian, who saw this scene, suddenly stood up and said, "I'll go." He had watched the earth-shattering exchange from the beginning to the end. It was almost a battle between the Chosen One and the Chosen One. Both of them had flaws. But for this era, whether it was Li Tianlan or Wang Tianzong, any one of them could be said to be supreme. The clear light flowed. Obviously, Wuyo didn't intend to give up. Xing Tian, who was watching this scene silently, finally opened his mouth and volunteered. "Saint, who was extremely nervous, subconsciously glanced at Xing Tian, and he was a little confused. You're going? He thought silently. You're in East Island now, nearly 1,000 kilometers away. When you get to Beihai, it will be too late. What are you going to do? Xianyuan Wushang looked at the screen quietly and said without looking back. I don't think we can waste too much time. I'll destroy Wuyo and let His Majesty deal with the energy core. Xing Tian said nonchalantly. And then? Xianyuan Wushang scolded with a smile. And then you think you can go home after you finish the task? Put away your little thoughts. Wuyo will be my brother sooner or later, but this is his own path. Why do you have to interfere? If my father finds out, he'll tear you apart. The corner of Xing Tian's mouth twitched, and he said quietly, His Majesty is in danger. Xianyuan Wushang also fell silent. At that moment, Wang Tianzong had a brief moment of consciousness, so the figure at that moment was completely Wang Tianzong's sword chi doppelganger, but he used Wuyo's energy. Just like the sword chi doppelganger Li Tianlan created with Wuqing. In essence, at least there was no difference in consciousness between Wang Tianzong and the real Wang Tianzong at that moment. So the sword strike just now was the 6 paths of reincarnation sword that truly belonged to the Chosen One. And Li Tianlan also overdrew his body in an instant. His limit was originally the peak of the thundershocking realm. But at that moment, he directly fixed his power at the half-step invincible realm, and twisted the power of the half-step invincible realm thousands of times in the sword strike. This level of attack, just one sword strike, almost made Li Tianlan's body completely collapse. Even with the endless vitality of the dragon vein of Zhongzhou state, Li Tianlan now suffered unimaginable injuries. And Wuyo's energy was still not exhausted. Everything seemed to be at the end of the road. But let Xing Tian go? For Xing Tian, even if he could rush over a distance of nearly 1,000 kilometers, he had to go back if he didn't want to die after this attack. He and Saint didn't lie. They did have great advantages in some aspects, but they also had great limitations. Killing an ordinary invincible realm expert was a piece of cake for Xing Tian, but if he appeared next to Li Tianlan at this time, whether he wanted to destroy Wuyo or go to Beihai, it was almost beyond Xing Tian's limit. After that, he wouldn't be able to attack again in the future, and he wouldn't even be qualified to stay here. This was not his original intention, nor was it his father's original intention. Xing Tian might not know why, but Xianyuan Wushang could be sure that if he stayed here, it would be of great benefit to him. Wuyo, Xianyuan Wushang quietly looked at the bright moon through the screen. His eyes flickered slightly and he whispered to himself, look at its current state, it's obviously polluted. Polluted? Wuyo? What state? Saint subconsciously scratched his head. In short, this is not the normal state of Wuyo. Well, we can put it in another way. In this state, Wuyo's psychology is distorted to a certain extent. Ruthlessness is the normal state. Loyalty, reliability, firmness, silence, iron blood. Xianyuan Wushang shook his head. What a pity. Saint quietly looked at Xianyuan Wushang. His voice was extremely calm. What about your majesty? He didn't care about Wuyo nor did he care about the so-called pollution. Everything he saw in Mount Dibbing tonight was something he had never seen before. What he cared about most was Li Tianlan's safety. Wang Tianzong directly injured Li Tianlan as soon as he made a move, and Wuyo's energy was still abundant. In such a state, how could Li Tianlan retreat unscathed? Retreat? Li Guangtu's heart moved slightly. The main reason for everything tonight was the final battle in Beihai. Now the joint forces suffered heavy losses. The 2 grandmasters of East Island, Tianhai Wuji and Yagyu Kurumi, both died in Mount Dibbing. Moraid was seriously injured and dying. Jiang Guochu, the patriarch of the Jiang family of South America, also died. More than a dozen top experts of the half-step invincible realm in the joint forces died without a whole body. Wang Xiaoyao was seriously injured and withdrew from the battlefield. Next was the time for the Wang family of Beihai to counterattack. They had the strength to recapture Kanglin in the shortest time, and completely drive all the forces of the joint forces out of Beihai. Everything tonight did make the Wang family of Beihai suffer heavy losses. But with the retreat of Li Guangtu and Jiang Shangyu, the final battle in Beihai should have been over, or even won. There was no need for Li Tianlan to stay in Beihai. Next, as long as he returned to Tiannan, there would be countless benefits waiting for Emperor Dong's palace in Zhongzhou State. Even in Tiannan, there would be countless benefits waiting for Emperor Dong's palace to reap. So take a step back temporarily. Although Li Tianlan was seriously injured, his ruthless power was not completely exhausted. Li Tianlan was not really at the end of the road. At least, if he wanted to retreat now, Li Tianlan should be able to do it. In that case, why not retreat? Does His Majesty have a backup plan? I mean other preparations? Saint lowered his voice and said subconsciously, I don't know. Xianyuan Wushang slowly shook his head. But given his current state, even if Big Brother has a follow-up plan, I'm sure he'll have to pay a heavy price. In fact, given his current state, the price is already very heavy. Even if he has a backup plan, I think he's still hesitating. What about now? Saint's face changed slightly. Ha, Xianyuan Wushang smiled. It's okay. Xing Tian glanced at Xianyuan Wushang with some excitement, thinking that Xianyuan Wushang wanted him to take action. Young master. Go away. Xianyuan Wushang glared at Xing Tian angrily. He looked at the screen and said slowly, Now Wuyo borrowed Wang Tianzong's sword intent. Without Wang Tianzong, things would be easy for Wuyo alone. So, Wang Tianzong is the key. After a pause, the fat man adjusted his glasses and said softly, Heavenly Son, I'll go talk to him. Chapter 1022. Saint looked at Xianyuan Wushang quietly and gradually frowned. How to talk? After a short silence, he asked directly without any politeness. Xianyuan Wushang said that he could talk to Qin Weibai, who was on the verge of death, and now he wanted to talk to Wang Tianzong. No matter who he chose to talk to, it would be an incredible thing in the eyes of others. How could he talk to a man who had almost lost his consciousness? No one in the world could be sure of Wang Tianzong's specific state, but the damage caused by the Eternal Sword might not be less than that of Qin Weibai. If Wang Tianzong could be talked to now, Saint would not believe it. The most important thing was, even if Wang Tianzong could be talked to, where could Xianyuan Wushang go to talk to him? Find him, and we can talk. Xianyuan Wushang smiled. On the screen in front of him, the picture was similar to a static state. Li Tianlan knelt on one knee in the air, and the blood flowing from his body was the only moving picture. The sun rose little by little on the sea, and the bright moon was still hanging in the sky. The sun and the moon were in the same sky. Wuyo's energy fluctuations became more and more obvious, and the clear light rose and fell between heaven and earth. It seemed to be thinking, and also seemed to be preparing for the strongest blow. The picture was deadlocked and sensitive. Maybe in the next second, or the next second, the stalemate in front of them would be completely broken. Judging from the sword just now, Wang Tianzong's sword Qi doppelganger had consciousness for a short time, so it could have the almost perfect 6 paths of reincarnation sword. Xianyuan Wushang said softly, Of course, it may also be Wuyo's stimulation that made Wang Tianzong have consciousness for a short time, but the time for his consciousness to recover was too short, and he didn't even know what was going on. After the sword, his consciousness fell silent again. Big Brother was seriously injured, which led to the current situation. But anyway, at least we can be sure that even if his consciousness can't be awakened, it is still in an active state now. So? Saint could hardly hide the impatience on his face. Xianyuan Wushang was so mysterious that he could understand what he said, but he didn't know what he meant at all. So, Xianyuan Wushang pushed up his glasses. The lights in the cabin shone on his lenses, and countless numbers instantly appeared on his lenses. Streams of data surged crazily. Xianyuan Wushang's voice. Xianyuan Wushang's voice rang. Just find him. The majestic data flowed directly into Beihai along East Island. Surveillance, weapon systems, satellites, and every computer and phone in the thousands of households in the North Sea. The unbridled data was practically a blatant intrusion, but the entire North Sea's network security did not trigger any alarms. One secret base after another of the Wang family of Beihai appeared in Xianyuan Wushang's vision in an instant. Within a few seconds, countless data had completely locked onto the Beihai prison hidden under the surface of Beihai. The control authority changed instantly. The largest cell in the Beihai prison had been completely emptied and transformed. More than a dozen doctors in white coats were busy, and the shrill alarm kept ringing. At this moment, the whole cell had been transformed into the most advanced medical room, and all the equipment in the Beihai Biological Laboratory was operating here. Wang Tianzong was lying in the nutrition chamber in the center of the medical room. Countless nutrient solutions were boiling in the nutrition tank, and the pale white, foam-like nutrient solutions were decreasing almost at a speed visible to the naked eye. On countless screens, Wang Tianzong's body data was constantly changing. The top medical team in the medical room was all alarmed, but no one knew what was going on. Doctor, His Majesty's brainwave broke through the peak just now, and was even close to the point where he could wake up completely. But this time is very short, exactly 0.3 seconds. During this time, the brainwave reached a new peak, and then His Majesty's brainwave fell into a trough, about 1/3 lower than usual. A young man in a white coat reported Wang Tianzong's situation with a blank look. A young man in a white coat reported Wang Tianzong's situation with a blank look. He wanted to say something subconsciously, but another voice sounded directly beside him. His Majesty's heart rate suddenly accelerated just now. In fact, during this period of time, His Majesty's various physical indicators have been recovering faster. We can be sure that the effect of the body of the god of war has begun to work. Obviously, something happened just now. His Majesty seems to have been stimulated by some special thing. I even have reason to believe that His Majesty was awake for 0.3 seconds just now, but soon fell into a deep coma. The doctor with the gold-rimmed glasses listened silently. After a long time he slowly said, "Copy His Majesty's body data and send it to Dr. Naylan." In addition, he glanced at the nutrition cabin and continued to say, "Add the latest type of nutrient solution. Everyone will work overtime today, and keep an eye on His Majesty's situation." Everything was displayed on the lenses. In the cabin of the helicopter, Xianyuan Wuxiang suddenly smiled and whispered, "I don't know if this counts as returning a favor to them." "What do you mean?" Saint asked subconsciously. Xianyuan Wuxiang did not answer. The lenses in front of him suddenly flashed, and a flash of colorful data flowed quickly. At the same time, in the medical room of Beihai prison, the big screen in the center suddenly flashed. Countless dense data were constantly combined on the screen. Fast. In less than 0.1 seconds, all the data suddenly combined into a figure. Xianyuan Wuxiang directly walked out of the screen. Everyone present turned a blind eye to his existence. This was not martial arts. To some extent, it was more like a virtual data clone of technological means. Xianyuan Wuxiang slowly walked to the nutrition cabin. He quietly looked at Wang Tianzong in the nutrition cabin, and kept silent for a long time. "Your family," he suddenly murmured to himself and shook his head. He seemed to recall some unpleasant memories. "Master." The virtual clone quickly faded and went into the nutrition cabin. The next moment, Xianyuan Wuxiang's sight completely fell into darkness. Darkness and light flashed instantly. In the cabin, Xianyuan Wuxiang narrowed his eyes. There seemed to be two perspectives in front of him. One was Saint, who was frowning tightly in front of him. From another perspective, it was a constantly changing darkness. The virtual clone, composed of countless data, walked quietly in the darkness. Xianyuan Wuxiang looked at Saint and slowly explained, "Now Wuyo and Wang Tianzong are in the state of fusion. I don't know if my brother has any backup plan. The most direct way I can think of is to stop Wuyo. I don't have a good way to destroy Wuyo without paying a price, so the only way is to let Wang Tianzong suppress Wuyo." After a pause he continued, "I'm a doctor, so I will completely stimulate Wang Tianzong's consciousness and speed up his recovery. When he recovers to the point where he can suppress Wuyo, the matter on Mount Dibbing will naturally be solved." Saint's eyes suddenly became cold. "You mean you are treating Wang Tianzong?" Xianyuan Wuxiang looked calm and nodded. "Yes." Chapter 1023. The darkness was like fog. Xianyuan Wuxiang's virtual doppelganger stood quietly in the darkness for a long time. Time might be a wrong concept here. There was chaos in the extreme darkness, and countless pictures kept flashing faintly. The blurred darkness seemed to be the eternal theme. There was no up or down, no left or right, no front or back, and no time. There were only blurred pictures flashing randomly in the darkness of nothingness. Xianyuan Wushang was motionless. From his point of view, this was the deepest part of Wang Tianzong's consciousness. The countless flashing pictures in the darkness were Wang Tianzong's dreams or memories. They were the most secret corners of his heart. The longer Xianyuan Wushang stood here, the more pictures he saw in the darkness. However, the pictures hidden in the darkness were too vague. Even if he saw them, it was difficult to capture any useful information. Moreover, these pictures were a collection of memories and dreams. Even if he captured something, it was difficult to tell whether it was real or not. The vast darkness was boundless. It seemed to be infinitely big, but also infinitely small. Xianyuan Wushang slowly reached out his hand. The virtual doppelganger, which was completely composed of data and spirit, raised his finger and gently tapped the surrounding darkness. A pure and bright light with strong vitality was slowly released from his fingertips. The darkness lit up slightly. Almost as soon as the darkness lit up, in the medical room of Beihai prison outside, Wang Tianzong's brainwave frequency began to soar again. In an instant, it surpassed the previous level. Although it was not close to the latest peak and reached the height of sobriety, it was close to the peak data. The light continued to spread in the darkness. Xianyuan Wushang's eyes suddenly lit up. Pieces of pure light rushed out from behind him and turned into countless incomprehensible phantoms. The surrounding darkness surged wildly. Consciousness was something that existed but was extremely illusory. In the darkness deep in Wang Tianzong's consciousness, with the surging of countless lights, a strong and indescribable vitality began to spread. Light footsteps suddenly sounded in the silent darkness. Xianyuan Wushang did not move. The depths of consciousness were all illusory, so there was naturally no so-called space. This infinitely big and infinitely small darkness was just a manifestation constructed by Xianyuan Wushang. The so-called footsteps were the illusion of Wang Tianzong's consciousness. All the darkness surged and gathered, and finally turned into a figure. The surrounding space seemed to turn gray at this moment. Wang Tianzong's figure became clearer and clearer. He stood in front of Xianyuan Wushang with his eyes closed, showing neither sadness nor joy. As the darkness receded, the countless chaotic images in the darkness also disappeared. Xianyuan Wushang's eyes suddenly lit up. It was like an instinctive greed. He didn't like men, but at this moment Wang Tianzong, whose consciousness was in a state of chaos, did have an almost fatal attraction to him. This is the only one in hundreds of years who has broken through the so-called supreme level. In any case, he deserved to be called a hero. Xianyuan Wushang was a virtual doppelganger. In this space, if he turned his consciousness into data and invaded and occupied the depths of Wang Tianzong's consciousness, Wang Tianzong would undoubtedly become Xianyuan Wushang's puppet in the shortest time, and the entire Wang family of Beihai would become his plaything. Wang Tianzong's willpower was extremely firm. It was not easy for him to get over this matter, but he was different from Qin Weibai after all. It was not too difficult for Xianyuan Wushang to invade Wang Tianzong. If he could have such a puppet, his eyes kept flashing. At that moment, countless thoughts seemed to appear in his mind, but they were all suppressed in the end. It's really a good opportunity. Tut tut, but I'm not an ungrateful villain. She saved me once. Today, I'll save you once. It can be considered that I've repaid the karma. Muttering to himself, Xianyuan Wushang shook his head with some pity and regret. In the gray darkness, he flicked his fingers gently. A lot of pure light, as soft as water, slowly surrounded Wang Tianzong's body. Wang Tianzong, who had no sadness or joy, like a dead thing, almost became vivid in an instant, with a trace of vitality. Xianyuan Wushang watched this scene quietly. His body slowly straightened up, and his round, harmless and comical face calmed down. At this moment he was not so serious or dignified, but his every move and look became extremely formal. He was different from Li Tianlan. Emperor Dong's palace was really one of his own people. Xianyuan Wushang could be cheeky, play the fool, and act unscrupulously. He could do whatever he wanted. The so-called dignity and face were not for his own people. But in front of Wang Tianzong, he represented more than himself. Wang Tianzong's eyes moved. The next moment, the light faded, and the gray darkness stabilized. Wang Tianzong opened his eyes. With pure confusion in his eyes, he looked at Xianyuan Wushang, who was standing in front of him, and could not come back to his senses for a while. Xianyuan Wushang looked at him and did not speak. The two sides looked at each other quietly for a long time. Who are you? The blankness in Wang Tianzong's eyes gradually faded, but deeper and deeper doubts emerged in his eyes. He looked at the dark space around him, and then looked at Xianyuan Wushang. He took the initiative to break the silence. The cloister of time and space, the ninth prince of the old city, Saint Xianyuan Wushang. Xianyuan Wushang's expression was calm, and his tone was slow. He made a very formal self-introduction. Wang Tianzong looked confused. What was the cloister of time and space? What the hell was the old city? The ninth prince? How fertile he was. Saint? Wang Tianzong shook his head hard, and seemed to catch the key point. Saint? Saint of Samsara Palace? When Saint revealed his identity, Wang Tianzong had been in a coma. But Di Jiang had fought with Saint, so he also speculated Saint's identity. The fat man in front of him was obviously not Wei Kunlun of Mount Shu. You mean Wei Kunlun? Saint is just his code name. The two saints don't mean the same thing. Xianyuan Wushang said lightly, do you remember what happened just now? Just now, Wang Tianzong frowned. It seems that I had a dream. It seems that. Li Tianlan. I don't remember. Even when he was just most conscious, he was still far from truly waking up. In this era, Wang Tianzong, who was in a coma, was currently the most qualified person to represent the word supreme. Li Tianlan was indeed very strong now, but if Wang Tianzong was completely awake, even if it was a sword chi doppelganger, Li Tianlan would not be able to block it. There was no possibility of blocking it at all. Xianyuan Wushang nodded and did not speak. Beihai. How is it? My family. Wang Tianzong hesitated and suddenly spoke. He didn't ask where he was, nor did he ask what was going on. When he saw Xianyuan Wushang, he instinctively asked about the other party's identity, and received an inexplicable answer. When he was fully conscious, the first thing he asked was North Sea, which was his family. All the questions, including Xianyuan Wushang's identity and his own state, seemed to be irrelevant in his mind. What he cared about most was his family and Beihai. Xianyuan Wushang was a little emotional, and his eyes became complicated. There was pity and regret. Without saying anything, Xianyuan Wushang just waved his hand casually. In the dark space, countless data appeared out of thin air. The first thing that appeared in front of Wang Tianzong was a pile of documents composed of data. Wang Tianzong was confused, but he did not say anything. He looked at them seriously. He quickly scanned the documents and finally fell on the signature at the end of the documents. The signature was Li Huaqing. Then there was the second document. The main content of the document was some personnel transfers in Zhongzhou State. Some of the personnel transfers in Huading and Wuyue were very eye-catching. The signature of the document was still Li Huaqing. Wang Tianzong watched silently, and his expression became calmer and calmer. The third document was a regulation notice issued by the cabinet of Zhongzhou State. It was aimed at many fields. Chen Fangqing's signature appeared on the document. There were more and more documents composed of data. Li Huaqing, Chen Fangqing, and the names of the directors of Zhongzhou State appeared one after another. Wang Tianzong did not speak, just watched quietly. He was so familiar with these documents. Although he did not read them carefully, he already knew the direction of these documents after they were thoroughly executed. Just from these documents, he could imagine what kind of storm the Wang family of Beihai was going through when he was in a coma. The documents composed of data were formed faster and faster. The date of the documents was getting closer and closer. The signatures of the documents began to become more and more monotonous. Li Huaqing's name gradually decreased, as if he was deliberately reducing the traces of his existence. On the other hand, Chen Fangqing's signature began to increase. In the past 3 days, Chen Fangqing had signed a total of more than 40 documents marked as top secret. That's about it. Xianyuan Wushang copied all the documents copied from the confidential database of Zhongzhou State here. Then he waved his hand, and all the documents turned into flying dust in an instant. The flying dust kept combining, and the huge amount of data formed dynamic pictures one after another. There was a strange silence. At this time, no one knew what was going on in East Island. There was a dead silence in Autumn Water and Tongtian. At this time, Kanglan was full of smoke, and Empress City was in a mess. The pictures of all the cities in Beihai flashed in front of Wang Tianzong's eyes. And then they fixed on Mount Dibing. Not the current Mount Dibing, but the previous Mount Dibing. It was like the previous battle video. From the moment Wang Xiaorao fought with Wang Xiaorao, Tinya Bright Moon Saber, One Sword of Samsara, Shattering Land, Law of Kendo, and the Fall of the Invincible Realm, the pictures flashed quickly. The breath of the sea, and the bright moon rose from the sea. Wuyo hung high in the sky. Wang Tianzong saw several of his own figures besieging Li Tianlan. Then he saw the picture in his dream that he had almost forgotten. The 6 paths of reincarnation sword collided with the crazy and twisted sword light. It was like countless half-step invincible realm experts had a fierce confrontation with the real chosen one. Wang Tianzong watched his sword energy doppelganger disappear. Wuyo was still hanging high in the sky. Li Tianlan knelt on one knee in the air. Countless white fog completely covered his body, but a lot of blood still flowed out from every corner of Li Tianlan's body, even under the protection of the dragon vein. It was a shocking sight. The picture gradually quieted down, but it still continued. The passage of time seemed to be an illusion. He read dozens of documents here, but it only took a few seconds in the outside world. Obviously, this was the picture of Mount Dibing now. No, there was no Mount Dibing anymore. The whole Mount Dibing had been completely razed to the ground in the collision just now. Now what appeared in front of Wang Tianzong was a ruin. Wang Tianzong watched all this quietly without saying a word. In the medical room of Beihai, Wang Tianzong, whose brain waves kept soaring, seemed to be in a completely unconscious state. He lay in the nutrition chamber, and his fingers hidden in the nutrition liquid trembled slightly without warning. There was a sudden gust of wind in the huge medical room. In an instant, the extremely sharp sword energy spread wildly throughout the Beihai prison. The sword energy rushed out of the prison and boiled in the sea. Once again, there was a huge and somewhat exaggerated whirlpool on the surface of Beihai. The overwhelming sword energy rushed to the sky from the whirlpool without stopping for a moment. Wuyo, who was hanging high in the sky, paused slightly. The next moment, the sky was torn apart. The sword energy was mighty, filling the sky and covering the sun and the moon. The morning sun and the bright moon were instantly suppressed by the sword energy all over the sky. Countless sword energy rushed toward the sea, almost out of control. The light of the sun and the moon was completely dim. Between heaven and earth, there was only pure sword light. The sword light whistled and traveled 10,000 meters in an instant. The sword energy condensed in one place directly appeared on the stage of formidable person, and turned into a sword energy doppelganger that was countless times stronger than before. Wang Tianzong looked at Li Tianlan in the air quietly. The sword energy flowed in his eyes, and he narrowed his eyes slightly. Crack! Li Tianlan's body finally moved. With the movement of his body, countless bones in his body seemed to bear a great load. Li Tianlan, who was crackling all over, slowly stood up. The white fog was getting thicker. There was more and more blood on Li Tianlan's body. He held Xianyuan Feng in his hand, and looked at Wang Tianzong on the stage of formidable person. The corners of his mouth slowly raised, revealing a ferocious sneer. In the depths of his consciousness, Xianyuan Wushang didn't seem to feel the changes in the outside world at all. He just looked at Wang Tianzong quietly and said meaningfully, "What's your plan?" The majestic sword energy continued to spread between heaven and earth. Wang Tianzong was silent for a moment and said slowly, "I don't feel the aura of Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu." After a pause he continued, "Wuyo, let me down." At this time, his sword energy and Wuyo's energy were completely one. When his consciousness fell into the trough, Wuyo could borrow his sword intent unscrupulously. At this time, his consciousness was restored, so he could also borrow Wuyo's energy unscrupulously. As for himself, for more than 2 years, the body of War God had constantly strengthened his body, but the sword energy of the eternal sword still existed in his body. Although it was a little weaker, it was still destroying his body tirelessly. All his sword energy was fighting against the sword intent in his body. Without Wuyo's energy, he wouldn't even be qualified to make a move. But now Wuyo was full of energy, and his consciousness was clear. At least on Mount Dibing, compared to the dark world. Even if Wang Tianzong could only use a clone of sword energy, he was still the real supreme existence. He originally had high hopes for Wuyo, but no one had expected that at the moment when Wuyo merged with his sword intent, Wuyo actually regarded Li Tianlan as the strongest threat, and even let go of Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu at all costs. So, Xianyuan Wushang smiled and said, "You won't make the same choice as Wuyo?" "I have no choice now," Wang Tianzong said calmly. "Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu are gone. Li Tianlan is the only target. He is the current ally of Beihai." Xianyuan Wushang narrowed his eyes. "So before I recover, I won't kill him. Beihai needs him for the time being. But I want Xianyuan Feng," Wang Tianzong said slowly. "Xianyuan Feng." Xianyuan Wushang muttered to himself and laughed. His original calmness gradually began to change, and there was a trace of sharpness in his whole body. "Do you deserve it?" Wang Tianzong was not angry. His clone of sword energy was on the platform of formidable person. Even if his consciousness disappeared again, or even if he died, he could make a move at the moment before death. Xianyuan Wushang couldn't stop him. No one could stop him. He said that he wouldn't kill Li Tianlan, but he had already left some leeway. If Xianyuan Wushang wanted to kill him, Wang Tianzong could also kill Li Tianlan with one move before death. At that time, Xianyuan Feng would still belong to Beihai, and Wuyo, who had merged with Xianyuan Feng, would be enough to fight against Xianyuan Wushang. If it's your ancestor, it's almost the same, but he doesn't need a divine weapon anymore. Xianyuan Wushang said slowly, "Xianyuan Feng belongs to my elder brother. To be exact, it belongs to the old city. No one will say anything if it's in my elder brother's hands. But if it's in your hands, I don't know what will happen in the future. Do you want to know the current result?" "Tell me about it." Wang Tianzong's tone was flat. "I have 3 virtual clones. One is in East Island, one is in Zhongzhou State, and one is here. I can control the weapon system of East Island. Naturally, I can also control the weapon systems of Zhongzhou State and Beihai. As long as you dare to do it, the entire Beihai will completely sink to the bottom of the sea within a minute. Do you believe me?" Xianyuan Wushang said with a smile. "I do owe your family a favor, so I'm willing to help you today, but you can't touch our fundamental interests. Believe me, no one wants to go to war with the old city, not even your family." "A threat?" Wang Tianzong raised his eyebrows. "It's just a fact. If you dare to rob our things and kill our people, then there will be a war." "A war with whom?" Wang Tianzong suddenly asked. As long as he dared to do it, according to Xianyuan Wushang, the entire Wang family of Beihai would be completely destroyed. In that case, how could there be a war? Xianyuan Wushang's mouth moved, but he didn't speak. Wang Tianzong also fell silent. "Stop it," Xianyuan Wushang said slowly. On the stage of formidable person, Wang Tianzong's sword chi clone suddenly raised his palm. Boundless clear light suddenly bloomed. The sword energy, as vast as the sea, suddenly pressed down. The sword energy completely shrouded the ruins of Mount Dibing. Countless sword energy completely bypassed Li Tianlan when they passed by him and rushed to Mount Dibing. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows in surprise. He looked in the direction of Mount Dibing. On Mount Dibing, the silent sword chi doppelganger nodded at Li Tianlan. The bright moon hovered in the sky. Countless silver lights fell on the stage of formidable person. Wang Tianzong's figure bathed in the clear light of the sword energy all over the sky. His figure became more and more solid, and finally turned into a statue of sword energy standing beside the stone of formidable person. From this day on, the bright moon in the sky of Beihai would always be there, day or night. Where the bright moon existed, Wang Tianzong's sword chi clone would always be there, regardless of wind or snow. Li Tianlan took a deep look at Wang Tianzong. In this state, Wang Tianzong's sword chi clone could not leave Mount Dibing. But as long as this clone was still there, the Wang family of Beihai would become extremely safe again. The sky was completely bright. In the morning sun, Li Tianlan, who was bleeding all over, took a deep breath and looked up at the sky. Wisps of rain fell without warning in the morning sun, penetrated the bright moon, penetrated the sword energy, and sprinkled on Mount Dibing. The sun and the moon were in the sky, and the drizzle continued. This was a picture that many people found extremely difficult to understand. Li Tianlan looked at all this in a daze. The white fog around him surged out crazily and kept drifting in the drizzle. The wounds on his body began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the depths of his consciousness, Xianyuan Wuxiang laughed. Wise choice. He looked at Wang Tianzong and whispered, "In this case, I also want to give you a gift. I hope you like it." His figure disappeared in the darkness. In the medical room, Wang Tianzong's brainwaves fell back, and his sword Qi clone was completely stable. It began to rain. The continuous rain healed Li Tianlan's wounds and fell to the ground. Bits of green appeared on the ruins of Mount Dibing. The green spread rapidly under the rain. The extremely strong vitality suddenly burst out. Large flowers and green trees were constantly growing on Mount Dibing in the rain. They were thriving. In the morning light, everything began to end, and only the end was left. The helicopter of East Island had taken off and returned. Xianyuan Wuxiang stretched and whispered, "It's over." Saint sat beside him and watched all this through the screen, stunned. He couldn't come back to his senses for a while. "Wang Tianzong," Xing Tian's voice sounded beside Xianyuan Wuxiang. "Very strong. Those who can reach the limits of kendo and martial arts at this juncture are always extraordinary." Xianyuan Wuxiang smiled, feeling a little regretful and pitiful. "Young master, maybe." Xing Tian hesitated. "Maybe we can take him back." "Why bother?" Xianyuan Wuxiang's glasses flashed. Through the endless distance, he quietly looked at the sword Qi clone beside the stone of formidable person. Xianyuan Wuxiang smiled softly. Even if he really wants to leave, his origin has doomed him to belong to the imperial palace or the war god realm. It has little to do with us. Besides, after a pause, Xianyuan Wuxiang continued, he doesn't care about martial arts anymore. Chapter 1024. Li Tianlan quietly bathed in the rain in the air. The wind and snow in Beihai had stopped when the sun rose, but the rain in the air became more and more dense. It moistened everything silently, but the ruins of Mount Dibing were changing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Flowers, grass, and trees. The vitality was vast, and the messy ruins were constantly glowing with vitality under the nourishment of the rain. Li Tianlan's injury was also constantly recovering. No one knew how terrible Li Tianlan's injury was after fighting with Wang Tianzong's sword. At that moment, he drew the sword to the limit of his own ability. It was no exaggeration to say that it was a sword that was completely out of control. Li Tianlan's current limit was to twist the sword energy of the peak of the thunder-shocking realm to the limit and completely burst out. Such a blow was equivalent to countless experts at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm attacking at the same time. But in the face of Wang Tianzong's sword energy doppelganger, what Li Tianlan burst out in an instant was the sword energy of the half-step invincible realm. The same twisting frequency, the same extreme burst. The moment the sword energy appeared, Li Tianlan had already suffered irreversible damage. At that time, even if Wang Tianzong's consciousness was still not too clear, he was still conscious. The most direct result of the collision of the two sword energy was that Li Tianlan completely shattered Wang Tianzong's sword energy doppelganger, and extremely terrible internal injuries appeared on Li Tianlan. His body was almost on the verge of collapse. His internal organs were severely torn, his muscle fibers became loose, and his bones were shaking. Except for the battle in Heaven Capital, this could be said to be the most serious internal injury Li Tianlan had suffered since he entered the secular world. Even if he was in the dragon vein, he could not fully recover in a short time. With his injury just now, if he could leave Mount Dibing and carry the dragon vein, it would take at least 2 or 3 years to fully recover to the peak state. This also doomed him to not make any progress in 2 or 3 years. But now with the drizzle, his internal injuries were recovering at an unimaginable and incomprehensible speed. His broken internal organs recovered as he breathed. His muscles, bones, and every cell in his body seemed to be cheering. Countless wounds kept healing as the rain fell. In just a few minutes, although Li Tianlan was covered with blood, his injuries had recovered. White mist surged around him, and the vitality in the mist seemed to have become denser because of the rain. Li Tianlan stood silently in the air above Mount Dibing and kept silent for a long time. This life force was so familiar to him, yet so strange at the same time. Every drop of rain in the world seemed to be a kind of power similar to the dragon vein, but the intensity of vitality was countless times stronger than that of the dragon vein. The injuries in his body, which originally needed 2 or 3 years to recover under the nourishment of the dragon vein, were healed in a few minutes. The changes on Mount Dibbing at this time, all of this showed how powerful the rain was. But the most important thing was, what did this rain that had suddenly appeared without any warning mean? The rain continued to fall for nearly 5 minutes. When the rain stopped, the ruins of Mount Dibbing were almost completely shrouded in flowers and greenery. All the wounded on the mountain had recovered. Wang Shengxiao was standing in front of the stage of formidable person, the only intact protected area, feeling all this silently. Everyone's heart was filled with disbelief and many doubts, but they didn't know who to ask. Li Tianlan's figure moved. He disappeared from the air, and when he reappeared, he was already in front of the stone of formidable person. Clap. His figure suddenly shook the moment he landed on the ground. His palm subconsciously patted the stone of formidable person, making a crisp sound. Now his internal injuries had indeed recovered, but his physical strength was little, which was also what puzzled Li Tianlan the most. He had the dragon vein, and its strong vitality could speed up the recovery of his injuries. It could also maintain his physical functions. In the state of battle, Li Tianlan, who had the dragon vein, could not be said to have endless physical strength, but he was not afraid of most battles of attrition. Unless he encountered the suppression of firepower like in Qiushui City, or the absolute outbreak of Wang Tianzong's sword qi doppelganger, his physical strength could be said to be absolutely abundant under normal conditions. The rain just now contained the kind of rainwater similar to the dragon vein, which helped him recover from his injuries, but could not restore his physical strength. Li Tianlan had no idea why. Li Tianlan took a few deep breaths and tried to stand up straight. Wang Shengxiao stood beside him, squinting and looking at Li Tianlan thoughtfully. Li Tianlan suddenly laughed. His voice was a little low, but with absolute coldness and sharpness. If you want to fight, now is a good opportunity. Think about it, such an opportunity is really tempting. Now my physical strength is almost completely overdrawn. Do you want to have a try? Wang Shengxiao looked at him quietly. After more than a minute of silence, he smiled and shook his head. Now Beihai needs a living East Emperor as an ally. Before the current situation fundamentally changes, Beihai and Emperor Dong's palace will always be each other's natural allies on the bottom line. Li Tianlan did not say anything more. He slowly came to the sword qi doppelganger that had become a statue, and remained silent. In the sky of Beihai, the sun and the moon were in the same sky. The vast clear light shrouded Mount Dibbing, and wisps of sword qi constantly merged into the statue in front of him. The statue seemed to have lost all consciousness and was motionless. But Li Tianlan was very clear that from now on, as long as there was a slight situation in the outside world, this seemingly unconscious sword qi doppelganger could appear in any corner illuminated by the clear light of the moon at any time. A sword qi doppelganger of Wang Tianzong. It was ridiculous to say. At this moment, the strongest person in the dark world turned out to be this sword qi doppelganger in front of him. At least before Wuyo's energy was exhausted, this sword qi doppelganger was the strongest. Even in this state, Li Tianlan was no match for it. Li Tianlan vaguely knew how far he was from the so-called supreme realm of martial arts. Tonight's fight, he vaguely saw the huge gap in combat effectiveness. That gap seemed to be only half a step, but in fact, it was a completely different concept. The only thing Li Tianlan could be sure of was that the sword qi doppelganger that he completely tore apart was not the state of Wang Tianzong's consciousness. The doppelganger in front of him was the state of Wang Tianzong's consciousness. How strong would it be in this state? Li Tianlan was silent. Others might not know the answer, but Li Tianlan could draw a conclusion. If this doppelganger had been here for a long time, after his 3 prohibitions, the doppelganger would wake up. Jiang Shangyu, Li Guangtu, and even Li Tianlan himself. If the sword qi doppelganger in front of him completely broke out, the 3 of them would not even have the chance to walk out of Mount Dibbing alive. Wang Tianzong had been silent for 2 years. But to some extent, he had also entered a new realm. 2 years. The serious injury limited his body and his sword energy. But when his consciousness was active, his sword intent was constantly improving. The sword qi doppelganger now used Wuyo's energy. In other words, before Wuyo's energy was exhausted, the full destructive power of Wang Tianzong's sword Qi doppelganger was even stronger than that of Wang Tianzong and Mormon's more than 2 years ago. It was vaguely close to the almost eternal sword at that time. Li Tianlan thought silently. Now if he wanted to fight against this sword Qi doppelganger, he had no chance of winning, unless he waited for Wuyo's energy to recover and used the prohibition again. Li Tianlan gently tidied up his black windbreaker. The windbreaker hung limply on Li Tianlan's body, looking listless. Large patches of golden patterns had all dimmed. Its energy had not been completely exhausted, but the remaining energy could only maintain its spirituality. It had no combat effectiveness at all. Li Tianlan was silent for a while and suddenly said, "I'm a little curious. At that time, at least from your standpoint, Wang Tianzong must have felt that he could kill me. So why didn't he do it?" Wang Shengxiao hesitated for a moment and said, "Maybe he had the same consideration as me." "Maybe." Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. "This is just my father's sword Qi doppelganger. My father's real body is too far away from here, and he is not in a good state now, so this sword Qi doppelganger can't speak. Even if it can express something, it is Wuyo's will. To be exact, the main consciousness of this doppelganger is still Wuyo, but it is Wuyo who is suppressed by my father's sword intent." Wang Shengxiao smiled helplessly. "So it can't be regarded as the sword emperor of Zhongzhou state now?" "Of course." Wang Shengxiao nodded. Li Tianlan nodded. He looked at the statue and was silent for a long time. Then he said softly, "We will have a fight." Wang Shengxiao's face changed slightly, but he did not speak. "But fortunately, we still have time now." He turned around and walked down the stairs, down the stage of formidable person. "What's your next plan?" Li Tianlan asked slowly. "Rebuild Mount Dibing." Wang Shengxiao's tone was a little bitter. Mount Dibing, which had stood in Beihai for hundreds of years, had a bad fate in recent years. First, it was swept by Li Tianlan and made a mess. Then, not long after, the mysterious expert, whose identity had not been found out, and who seemed to have disappeared into thin air, directly split Mount Dibing with a sword. Now, after 2 years of peace, the entire Mount Dibing completely disappeared tonight, leaving only the stage of formidable person intact. It was impossible for the Wang family of Beihai to have no headquarters. It was imperative to rebuild Mount Dibing. "Congratulations." Wang Shengxiao shook his head and drove all the messy thoughts out of his mind. He looked at Li Tianlan and said, "Right now, Li Tianlan really deserved this congratulation." Wang Shengxiao had long known about the existence of Wuyo. He also knew that Wuyo could communicate with his father's sword intent, and then form the strongest combat capability in the dark world. In the final battle in Beihai, he sent all the experts. It seemed that he pinned all his hopes on the firepower of Mount Dibing and Li Tianlan's combat capability. But in fact, Wang Shengxiao had always been very confident. It turned out that everything Wang Shengxiao expected did not disappoint him. He saw his father's sword Qi doppelganger. He saw Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangta fleeing in panic. The only thing he did not expect was that Li Tianlan had the power to directly crush his father's sword Qi doppelganger without Wuqing. What made him most disappointed was that Wang Tianzong's sword Qi doppelganger did not attack Li Tianlan. He won the final battle in Beihai, but the final plan directly failed. Wang Shengxiao did not want Li Tianlan to die. As he said at this stage, Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai were indeed allies at the bottom line. He wanted to see Li Tianlan alive. Wang Shengxiao hoped that Li Tianlan was alive, but he also wanted Wuqing in Li Tianlan's hands. Wang Tianzong's sword Qi doppelganger could completely take down Wuqing and let Li Tianlan go. Wuyo's energy was still abundant, which meant that the sword Qi doppelganger would not disappear in a short time. After getting Wuqing, even if Li Tianlan attacked, Mount Dibing would not be afraid of anything with this sword Qi doppelganger. When Wuyo and Wuqing merged, Wang Tianzong's sword Qi doppelganger would be more stable. He might not be able to leave Mount Dibing, but Wang Shengxiao also believed that he could enter the invincible realm in a few years. As long as he entered the invincible realm, with Wuyo's cooperation, he also had the capital to stand at the peak of the dark world and no longer had to be afraid of Li Tianlan. But Wang Tianzong's sword Qi doppelganger directly turned into a statue. Wuqing was still on Li Tianlan. The final battle in Beihai was over. Wang Shengxiao did win, but Li Tianlan was the most worthy of congratulation at this time. Everything that happened tonight would continue to ferment in the shortest amount of time, and eventually evolve into a true storm. The two martial arts grand masters of East Island, Yagyu Kurumi and Tianhai Wuji, both died in Li Tianlan's hands. Jiang Guochu, the new patriarch of the Jiang family of South America, melted in Wuyo's clear light. 3 invincible realm experts died, and the dark world was increasingly declining. For Emperor Dong's palace, this also meant the benefits that were big enough to expand their scale again. Now the most elite nightmare core of Emperor Dong's palace was already in East Island. Although there was no clear news, it was obvious that Li Tianlan was determined to get East Island. Both Saint and Hidden God, 2 invincible realm experts, were sent to East Island by Li Tianlan, which was enough to show Li Tianlan's determination. With the end of the final battle in Beihai and the news of the death of the 2 grandmasters in East Island, Emperor Dong's palace's strength in East Island would hardly encounter any so-called competitors. The Purgatory of Heaven capital might be one. But the Purgatory of Heaven capital had already been blocked by Li Tianlan's sword. No one knew how long this kind of blockade would last. Everyone in the Purgatory of Heaven capital might be waiting for Li Guangtu to go back and lift the blockade. But Li Guangtu was also seriously injured tonight. In his current state, whether he could lift the blockade or not was another matter. Even if Li Guangtu could do it, he, who had lost the initiative and was seriously injured, was not qualified to compete with Emperor Dong's palace for the Purgatory of Heaven capital. For the Purgatory of Heaven capital, the first thing they had to face now was that Emperor Dong's palace would devour their interests. The Jiang family of South America seemed to be far away from Emperor Dong's palace, but a fact that no one could ignore was in front of them. Previously, Lin Fengting was in America now. The headquarters of the Lin clan might still be able to maintain a detached and secluded posture, but Lin Fengting's presence was enough to build a bridge of cooperation between the Lin clan's American branch and Emperor Dong's palace. In this way, the Lin clan's American branch had a real strong support, and Emperor Dong's palace could also take advantage of the situation to extend its reach to America. Today in America, not only the Jiang family, but also the Heroes Club, Fantasy World and other forces large and small, could be conquered by Emperor Dong's palace. After tonight's battle, Wang Xiaoyao was seriously injured, and the underground force of Snow Country was bound to be turbulent. The Snowdance Corps stationed in Wulan State was also Li Tianlan's direct force. Mochizuki and Song had not died. She was very close to the peak of the invincible realm. When she reconnected her arm and recovered from her injury to a certain extent, the Dark Knights could join hands with the Snowdance Corps to sweep Snow Country and squeeze Wang Xiaoyao's living space. When the final battle in Beihai broke out, the whole Dark World was not calm. The Holy Land was raided. 2 Heavenly King General and Duke of the Samsara Palace, who had been missing for a long time, reappeared. The forces of the Fantasy World of America and the Heroes Club were also attacking the secret base of the Jiang family of South America. There was chaos everywhere. It could be imagined that such chaos would not subside with the end of the final battle in Beihai. Instead, it would become more chaotic. Jiang Shangyu, who had been exposed, naturally would not hide anymore. He saved Moraid. Which meant that he still kept the power of Knights Templars. With the death of Tianhai Wuji, Yagyu Kurumi, and Jiang Guochu, Jiang Shangyu would definitely not give up the forces of these allies if he could intervene. Wang Xiaoyao was isolated and helpless, so he would also become Jiang Shangyu's ally. Wang Xiaoyao also needed strength to rectify the forces left by his allies after their death. The wind was rising and the clouds were surging. A new era of chaos had completely emerged. There were self-protectors who tried to maintain their status, and there would also be speculators who kept making choices for a higher status. There were ambitious conquerors like Emperor Dong's palace, and there would also be people like Jiang Shangyu, who did not give up their evil intentions. It was a feast. The only pity was that it was difficult for the Wang family of Beihai to gain much from this feast. Wang Shengxiao's eyes flickered, and there was obvious unwillingness and regret in the depths of his eyes. He said, "What do you suggest?" In this battle, Emperor Dong's palace had completely broadened the road ahead, and there was more than one road. Every road could be said to be a bright road. Absolute power, huge interests, and lofty status were almost at their fingertips. Emperor Dong's palace was rising rapidly. Under the sky without shadows, it seemed to be becoming a new shadow that was enough to cover everyone. Wang Shengxiao was silent for a while and said softly, "There are many choices, but the first choice is to stabilize the internal situation. It's time to solve the problem of Zhongzhou State." Zhongzhou State. Qin Fangqing. This was the most important thing at present. It was so for Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai. The final battle of Beihai was not the end. At least on the issue of Qin Fangqing, there was still a possibility that Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai would work closely together. Beihai needed to overthrow Qin Fangqing to stabilize some disagreements within the Southeast group, re-stabilize the situation, and then lay dormant for a while. And Li Tianlan's new group also needed to get rid of Qin Fangqing, the stumbling block, and let the outline of the new group really appear in front of everyone. Qin Fangqing might struggle on his deathbed, but it was nothing to worry about. Tonight, the Wang family of Beihai could collect enough evidence in the smoke. Similarly, as Emperor Dong's palace entered East Island, Li Tianlan could also produce countless evidence of Qin Fangqing's cooperation with East Island in a very short time. Even if Li Tianlan couldn't produce it, so what? After occupying the dark world of East Island, such evidence didn't even need to be found by Emperor Dong's palace. If they needed any evidence, they could make it themselves. The final battle of Beihai was completely Qin Fangqing's last madness. His situation had already reached the point where he was deserted by his friends and family. With the failure of the final battle of Beihai, Qin Fangqing's front had completely lost all cover, and was completely exposed to the artillery fire of Beihai and Emperor Dong's palace. Qin Fangqing, Li Tianlan said slowly, "It's nothing to worry about. It's true, and we still have enough time. There is still nearly a year before the election. Enough for us to make a lot of arrangements." Wang Shengxiao nodded. He thought about what benefits Beihai could get after Qin Fangqing fell. When he slowly relaxed, Li Tianlan's voice sounded again. "About Wang Qinglei, you already have an internal opinion, don't you?" The corner of Wang Shengxiao's mouth twitched fiercely. He looked at the expressionless Li Tianlan and asked, "What do you mean?" "Just a reminder," Li Tianlan said flatly. "This man has the ambition of a wolf. It's too dangerous to occupy Wuxia. If you let him go further, believe me, it's definitely not a good thing for you. The final battle of Beihai will reveal the dagger. Now Wang Qinglei seems to be a member of the Southeast group, but with Qin Fangqing's fall, if Wang Qinglei goes further, not only will he occupy a place in the Southeast group, but he may even become the new leader of the Prince group in the future. There will be endless troubles in the future. My suggestion is, even if you can't pull Wang Qinglei down this time, at least put him above Wu Yue and Yi Dongsheng." Wang Shengxiao's body seemed to tremble because of anger. Li Tianlan emphasized the word harvest. This was undoubtedly telling him that besides Zhongzhou State, Beihai couldn't get the benefits of East Island, Snow Country, and America. As for Zhongzhou State, it was already a great harvest to solve the hidden dangers within the Southeast group. After Qin Fangqing fell, they couldn't get the benefits either. Why don't I think we've gained a lot? Wang Shengxiao was so angry that he laughed. Li Tianlan's appetite was beyond his imagination. If they really followed Li Tianlan's plan at this time, then in this final battle of Beihai, the Wang family of Beihai, which had paid countless efforts, could only stabilize the internal situation and gain nothing. This was not what Wang Shengxiao wanted. Before the final battle, he wanted to be ruthless and more, all for the sake of benefits. After the final battle, Li Tianlan told him that he couldn't get anything. This psychological gap was so obvious that no matter how good Wang Shengxiao's self-cultivation was, he couldn't help but lose his composure at this time. "I think we are fully capable of getting something else," Wang Shengxiao emphasized and looked at Li Tianlan with an extremely tough tone. Li Tianlan's expressionless face didn't change at all. He walked down the steps of the stage of formidable person and said blandly, "I don't want what you think, I want what I think." He looked straight into Wang Shengxiao's eyes and said, "I think that what I said is enough." He pointed at the sword Qi doppelganger on the stage of formidable person and laughed. "If you're not convinced, why don't you let it try?" Chapter 1025. Wang Shengxiao stood where he was and kept silent for a long time. The expression on his face froze bit by bit, looking grim and stern. His eyes, which seemed to be peaceful at all times, were about to spit fire. "You've gone too far," Wang Shengxiao said in a deep voice. Europe, East Island, Snow Country, America, Zhongzhou State. Several superpowers were leaderless. Such a mess was destined to be the beginning of a new dynasty. The Wang family of Beihai was indeed unable to take care of other things now, but it didn't mean that it didn't want to fight for its own interests. In the eyes of Wang Shengxiao, everyone in the Wang family of Beihai, and everyone in Beihai province, the victory of the final battle in Beihai was not a victory. Victory? No one had the face to say that now. The joint forces retreated, the Grand Master of East Island died, and Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu were both seriously injured. But so far, what did Beihai get? The Beihai Corps suffered heavy losses. Countless middle and basic officers were killed and injured. Several cities in Beihai were in a mess. Some people in Kanglan were still fighting in blood. The so-called victory was just the withdrawal of the joint forces from Beihai. All the victories were nominal. In fact, Beihai had suffered heavy losses. Such an outcome was a little too tragic for the entire North Sea. Wang Shengxiao tightened his face, and an extremely depressed emotion crazily pressed down on his heart. His face even turned purple for a moment. Everything was in line with his expectations, but there were also some unexpected things. Wang Tianzong's sword energy doppelganger did not attack Li Tianlan. This was something that Wang Shengxiao could not understand at all. At that moment, Li Tianlan was obviously an arrow at the end of its flight. As long as Wang Tianzong took action, it was inevitable that Wuxia would take away Wuqing. With the existence of the sword energy doppelganger, it was also inevitable that Wuxia would devour Wuqing. But now Wuqing was still with Li Tianlan. Without Heartless, everything had changed. In Wang Shengxiao's expectation, the victory of the final battle in Beihai was just the beginning. After getting Wuqing, it was time for Beihai to really recover its losses. If it wanted to, Beihai could actually do a lot of things. In Snow Country, with the victory of the final battle and Wang Xiaoyao's serious injury, Wang Xiaoyao's position in Snow Country was bound to be unstable. Such a factor would make some special warfare agencies of Snow Country restless, and the Snowdance Corps of Reki City would take advantage of it. But it would also give Mount Dibbing a chance to take back the power of Snow Country. Wang Shengxiao was not greedy enough to want to take back everything in Snow Country. Wang Xiaoyao would eventually stabilize his position, and the Snowdance Corps would also occupy a part of the benefits. Wang Shengxiao would be satisfied if he could take back 1/3 of the power of Snow Country. As for the European continent, the Holy Land, which had suffered heavy losses, would recuperate with its tail between its legs. For a long time, the Dark Knights would expand. Emperor Dong's palace would unite the power of the Dark Knights to go out of the northern part of the European continent. But the Wang family of Beihai also had allies in the European continent. Although Queen Qingtong of Shadow was completely abolished by Li Tianlan more than 2 years ago, Paul's injury was gradually recovering. Rothschild had a deep foundation, and had always been one of the strongest allies of Mount Dibbing. With the help of Rothschild, the Wang family of Beihai could also get a part of the benefits in the European continent. As for America, the Wang family of Beihai could not reach it. Their most likely gain in America was nothing more than to buy some industries that originally belonged to the Jiang family of South America, and they were doomed to not get the best industrial resources. It was better than nothing. As for East Island, Wang Shengxiao did not want to compete with Emperor Dong's palace. He intended to give up East Island completely. Even in the action against the Prince Group in Zhongzhou State, Wang Shengxiao did not intend to take too many benefits. Instead, he intended to support the new group as compensation for the Wang family of Beihai taking away Wuqing and giving it to Emperor Dong's palace. But now Wuqing was still with Li Tianlan. As soon as Li Tianlan opened his mouth, he directly took away the interests of the Wang family of Beihai and wanted to take all the interests of Zhongzhou State. Then, it was obvious that if the Wang family of Beihai attacked other places, Emperor Dong's palace's attitude would be needless to say. Even if Wang Shengxiao was made of mud, he was full of anger at this time. He completely put on an unyielding posture. "I deserve it." Li Tianlan glanced at him and said, I know Wuyo is here, and I know what you are up to, but I still come. In fact, there is no such thing as too much or not too much. You and I both know what is going on. You didn't do what you wanted to do, so next, I will do what I want to do. It's fair, isn't it? Wang Shengxiao stopped breathing and couldn't say a word for a while. Li Tianlan's words were full of hints, both soft and hard. What made him most helpless was that although there was Wang Tianzong's sword chi doppelganger on Mount Dibing, if he looked at the pattern of the whole dark world, when Li Tianlan spoke with strength, the Wang family of Beihai really had no power to refute. Wang Shengxiao took several deep breaths, but he managed to calm down. After dealing with things in Beihai, we have something to talk about. Li Tianlan twitched the corner of his mouth and said with a faint smile, "Let's talk about it later." Wang Shengxiao said no more and waved his hand to ask someone to arrange a helicopter. The helicopter was quickly in position. He watched Li Tianlan's figure enter the cabin and watched the helicopter take off. His mind was still thinking about the unplanned variables. He was not sure where the variables were, but looking at the vibrant ruins around him, he subconsciously felt that something was wrong. Wang Tianzong's sword chi doppelganger was more complete and powerful than their boldest imagination. If all this had nothing to do with the rain that revived all things, Wang Shengxiao would not believe it. But the key was, where did the rain come from? Was it man-made? If it was man-made, it could explain why Wang Tianzong did not attack Li Tianlan. He should have reached some kind of deal with the owner of the rain behind the scenes. But there was another problem. Wang Tianzong was in Beihai prison and unconscious. Even if the sword chi doppelganger was now complete, most of it was Wuyo's energy, and Wang Tianzong's consciousness only occupied a small part. If the rain was man-made, how could that person communicate with Wang Tianzong, who was in a deep coma? Everything was revived and the vitality was majestic. If such a rain could be artificially arranged, was the person behind the scenes still a human being? The helicopter was getting farther and farther away from his sight. Wang Shengxiao stood there silently. After a long time he murmured to himself, "What the hell is it?" The power that was almost out of control was roaring in the dense forest with completely crazy killing intent. There was a gust of wind in the cold forest. The wind was as sharp as a knife, tearing up nearby trees and dead branches. Fallen leaves and snow were dancing in the air at the same time. Blood flowed down from every corner of his body. The pungent smell of blood surrounded him, and the tearing pain swept through his whole body. Jiang Shangyu sat under a withered tree with red eyes and gritted his teeth. Because of extreme anger, his body kept trembling. "You have never failed." Li Guangtu's weak and hoarse voice rang out beside him. Before his voice had died away, the ruler of the purgatory of heaven capital had already coughed violently. Thick blood kept coughing out of his mouth. He was short of breath, and his face was as pale as paper. His breath had fallen to the bottom. When Wuyo jumped out of the sea, it was Jiang Shangyu who blocked most of the sword chi of Wuyo and Wang Tianzong. But at this time, looking at the specific situation, Li Guangtu's injury was much more serious than Jiang Shangyu's. "I thought you were a very calm person. You have endured for many years just to break out. Many times I even admire you. But now you are a little out of control. It's just a failure. The situation is not irreversible." Li Guangtu kept gasping and said with a low smile, "When I was young, I wanted the Li family to annex the Wang family of Beihai. At that time, my father once told me that the Wang family of Beihai's Mount Dibing had a power that the Li family couldn't resist. Even if that power had a limit, it was enough to destroy the Li family countless times before that power was exhausted." Ahem, haha, I didn't believe it at that time. But today it seems that it's true. You and I both know that it's similar to the power of a murderous weapon. So it must have a limit. It can attack once or twice. I don't believe that its energy is endless. If that's the case, why does the Wang family of Beihai hide it? It could have unified the dark world with it. At present, we have indeed lost. The joint forces have suffered heavy losses, but the opportunity is still there. What we should do most is to find a way to erase the energy reserve of that thing. So what if we have failed? When the energy reserve of Mount Dibing is exhausted, we can completely launch a second decisive battle in Beihai. You are far younger than me. Why are you not as open-minded as I am? Don't let me look down on you. What do you know? Jiang Shangyu silently listened to Li Guangtu's words. After he finished speaking, he said something extremely gloomy and cold. As he spoke, wisps of killing intent surged uncontrollably again. Jiang Shangyu's eyes became more and more scarlet, with naked gloom and resentment. He could ignore failure. But no one knew what he had paid in a very short time to fight against Wuyo's energy. Yagyu Kuromi, Tianhai Wuji and Jiang Guochu. 2 disciples and an ally. Losing them would hurt his heart, and it would greatly damage the vitality of his joint forces. But it was not enough to make him lose his mind. What made him completely unable to calm down was his current state. Compared with Li Guangtu, who was seriously injured, his current state was too good. So good that it was incredible to everyone. Jiang Shangyu was also seriously injured and exhausted. But even so, if he wanted to do it now, he could still barely maintain the combat capability beyond the peak of the invincible realm. What this meant could be imagined. Not to mention Jiang Shangyu's realm, his current defensive power was probably close to that of Wang Tianzong in Mormons, and it was infinitely close. Li Guangtu couldn't understand how Jiang Shangyu maintained his current state in that kind of sword energy. It was true that the defense of a domain-type master was stronger than that of a kendo master, but it was impossible to be so ridiculously strong. Jiang Shangyu could be said to be seriously injured now, but he could also be said to be fine. Li Guangtu didn't know why this happened, so he naturally didn't know what Jiang Shangyu had experienced at that moment. Similar to Li Tianlan, Jiang Shangyu's body was also a weakness. The weakness of Li Tianlan's body was that it was not strong enough. Jiang Shangyu's body was strong enough, but the 2 different kinds of extreme toxins in his body were destroying his body all the time. Fortunately, he had another self. In the normal state, Jiang Shangyu was actually much weaker than everyone thought. He could barely maintain the realm at the peak of the invincible realm. If he wanted to fight with all his strength, the other self had to fall into a deep sleep. The 2 of them were originally one person. So to some extent, the other self could bear a lot of damage for him. With the help of various drugs, this also meant that his physical strength had doubled and reached the real supreme threshold. He was in a good state now, because the other self had borne unimaginable damage. After this battle, Jiang Shangyu couldn't even be sure whether the other self could continue to live. This was definitely equivalent to paying a real life. Jiang Shangyu had never even thought about such a heavy price. It doesn't matter whether I understand or not. What matters is that we still have a chance now. We can recuperate and make a comeback. Li Guangtu said blandly. He was seriously injured. If Jiang Shangyu wanted to, he could completely kill him at any time. But Li Guangtu didn't care about this. After the final battle in Beihai, the situation in the Dark World became clearer. The Wang family of Beihai and Emperor Dong's palace were allies above the bottom line. He and Jiang Shangyu, before either of them reached the real supreme realm, they were allies in all aspects. If the lips died, the teeth would be interdependent. No matter which one was missing, it would be difficult for the other to continue to exist. You're a ruthless man. Jiang Shangyu took several deep breaths and suddenly said, There was a time when I admired you very much. Your stubbornness can make you completely ignore everything. So when the situation develops to a certain extent, there is nothing you can't do, and there is nothing you can't do. But do you know what your biggest weakness is? Li Guangtu narrowed his eyes and looked at Jiang Shangyu, his eyes deep. Jiang Shangyu waved his hand expressionlessly. In the forest, the fallen leaves swept and gradually buried Moraid, who had fallen into a coma beside Jiang Shangyu. Moraid's injury was also extremely serious, but it was not fatal. Jiang Shangyu had injected him with a large number of top-level recovery drugs of the sanctuary. In 24 hours at most, he could wake up from a coma and barely regain his ability to move. This was a forest located between Shenzhou and Mount Dibing. It was vast and populated. It was just the blind spot of Mount Dibing. In 24 hours, Beihai had no power to search here. They had too many things to do. After 24 hours, when Moraid woke up, he could leave Beihai by himself. But now, if Jiang Shangyu insisted on taking him with him, that would be the most dangerous. Say it. Li Guangtu looked at Jiang Shangyu's movements and said blandly, You're too courageous, so you're very brave to admit your failure. Jiang Shangyu laughed. I'm different from you. I used to be a nobody with many shortcomings. Even now, I don't have the mentality of a big shot. When things change and the plan goes wrong, my mentality will collapse and my emotions will explode. I'm not willing to accept failure, and I don't want to admit the current result. Li Guangtu sneered. So what? Now we've failed. Indeed. Jiang Shangyu nodded. You're right. We've failed, but it doesn't mean that we can't continue to do something. I want to make a comeback. In this situation, do you think there's a possibility for me to make a comeback? Li Guangtu suddenly fell silent. At this moment, he suddenly understood what Jiang Shangyu wanted to do next. Is there a possibility to make a comeback? He pondered silently and sensed his current state. After a long time, Li Guangtu, who looked solemn, said in a deep voice, Are you crazy? You're not blind, and neither am I. We all have eyes, and we can see that his current state is not good. Jiang Shangyu said indifferently, I don't care whether I'm crazy or not. You just need to tell me, is there a possibility for us to make a comeback? Li Guangtu continued to be silent. After a long time, he took a deep breath and said, I don't know. I don't know either. Jiang Shangyu laughed. Since you don't know, it's easy to do. He reached out to Li Guangtu. You, me, and ourselves are our only chips now. I can't accept the current failure, so now, would you like to bet with me? The helicopter roared in the air, and Mount Dibing was getting farther and farther away. The outline of Shenzhou City had appeared in Li Tianlan's sight. Only Li Tianlan sat quietly in the spacious cabin, and he was also thinking about the problem that Wang Shengxiao was thinking about. Mochizuki Sange, who was in a coma, lay silently in the corridor in the center of the cabin. Her body had been injected with a lot of recovery potions, and her breath had gradually stabilized. The Wang family of Beihai also found Mochizuki Sange's severed arm. After simple but extremely high-end treatment, Mochizuki Sange's severed arm could be connected. Because the medicine use was absolutely precious, it would hardly have any impact on Mochizuki Sange in the future. Li Tianlan also took her on the plane. After confirming that her state was fine, he didn't pay much attention to her for the time being. He was also very curious about why Wang Tianzong didn't attack him at that time. He was in an extremely bad state at that time, but he had a trump card. He could use the ruthless power to save Mochizuki Sange, and directly reverse the situation that had been in a stalemate for a long time at that moment. Naturally, it was not an impulse to do so. Li Tianlan also considered himself. If he had no other means, even if he went to save Mochizuki Sange, he would have other choices. But at that time, after smashing the first sword chi clone of Wang Tianzong, in everyone's heart, he should have been really at the end of the road. In fact, it was not wrong to say so. Li Tianlan did have other means at that time, but he hadn't used the so-called means himself, so he didn't know what kind of consequences it would cause. The only thing he could be sure of was that he should be able to reluctantly accept the consequences, but it was difficult for the entire Mount Dibing and the Wang family of Beihai to face such a result. Wang Tianzong didn't attack, so it was naturally meaningless to talk about it now. But why Wang Tianzong didn't attack was what Li Tianlan was most interested in. He was more sure than Wang Shengxiao that there was a huge man-made factor in the rain. That kind of exuberant vitality was completely the aura of the dragon vein. Obviously, the person behind the rain also had a huge blessing in his body. And in terms of scale, just judging from the vitality of the rain, the vitality and luck of the other party were at least countless times stronger than that of the dragon vein in Li Tianlan's body. But in terms of quality, the other party was obviously not as good as the dragon vein. Now, no matter how he thought about it, the only reason why Wang Tianzong didn't attack was because of the person behind the rain. The key was who this person was. Judging from the choice and position he made, it was obvious that he was helping Emperor Dong's palace. If he hadn't appeared, Wang Tianzong's sword chi clone wouldn't have been so complete. In that case, Li Tianlan would have to face Wuyo, who couldn't communicate with him at all. If the stalemate continued, it was likely to be another story. The other party helped him and Wang Tianzong, but he hadn't shown up so far. Li Tianlan had no idea what the other party wanted to do. The phone suddenly rang, interrupting his thoughts. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly and glanced at the number. It was a call from Wang Shengxiao. Li Tianlan answered the call, feeling somewhat baffled. Hello. I'm afraid you'll misunderstand, so I think we can talk now, Wang Shengxiao said quietly. What do we have to talk about? If it's about cooperation, you can talk to Han Donglu, Li Tianlan said lightly. No, I have a question. Wang Shengxiao smiled and said, if my father's sword Qi clone really attacked you just now, do you have the confidence to break the trap? Li Tianlan fell silent. Does it make sense? He suddenly asked. This so-called if could only be an assumption forever. In fact, Wang Tianzong's sword Qi clone had never attacked. Now that he had left Mount Dibing, Wang Tianzong's sword Qi clone had no chance to attack. It doesn't make any practical sense, but I need an answer in my heart. An answer that can convince myself. Wang Shengxiao said lightly, if my father's sword Qi clone really attacked you just now, do you have the confidence to block that sword? Li Tianlan smiled. He seemed to understand Wang Shengxiao's mind. After thinking about it, he slowly said, no. Before Wang Shengxiao continued, Li Tianlan continued, but I have the confidence to completely destroy the Wang family of Beihai. Chapter 1026. Wang Shengxiao showed an expression that said, are you King bluffing me? All the emotional fluctuations in his heart were clearly expressed. You don't even have the confidence to block that sword. How can you destroy the Wang family of Beihai? Li Tianlan didn't explain anything. The outline of Shenzhou city in the distance gradually became clear. He would take a plane from Shenzhou to Nanyuan, and then return to Tiannan. Everything seemed to be over. But the next thing was complicated. Tiannan, Zhongzhou State, East Island, Snow Country, Europe, America. Li Tianlan's life would gradually become busy. And such a busy life was what he had been looking forward to for a long time. The whole Li family had been looking forward to it for a long time. The Li family, a strange color flashed in Li Tianlan's eyes. He sighed softly and shook his head. After hanging up the phone, he thought for a while and dialed Qin Weibai's number again. Tianlan. The phone was picked up as soon as it rang. It was obvious that Qin Weibai didn't sleep all night. Her voice was a little tired, but it was still gentle and soft. Li Tianlan's heart softened and he said, it's okay. It's all over. I'm on my way back. That's good. Qin Weibai laughed, and even her voice became much brighter. It must have been a hard night, right? Actually, it's okay. Although there are some variables, it's generally smooth. Mochizuki-san is here with me. She's in a coma, and her injury is a little serious. Talk to Naylan and let her arrange it. Li Tianlan said slowly. There was silence on the other end of the phone. 2 seconds later, Qin Weibai's normal voice sounded. Okay. After a pause, she continued. Did you kill Jiang Shangyu? No. Li Tianlan felt it was a pity. At the moment when Wuyo rolled up the sword energy all over the sky, both Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu were at a dead end. Li Tianlan also tried to join forces with Wuyo at that time, so he made a sword strike. At that time, Jiang Shangyu was in a very strange state. Li Tianlan could be sure that Jiang Shangyu had suffered unimaginable and even irreversible damage, but the fact told him that Jiang Shangyu's state was countless times better than he thought. He didn't care about this at first, because everything was meaningless. As long as he and Wuyo joined forces, their strength was absolutely crushing. He had absolute confidence to kill Jiang Shangyu in that state, and even capture Li Guangtu alive. There would be no accidents. But Worryless, who had made him its first target, didn't cooperate. It didn't even care about Li Guangtu and Jiang Shangyu's escape. Instead, it focused all its attention on him. In Li Tianlan's opinion, it could be said that he was an absolutely stupid teammate. Not only did he let Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu go, but he also didn't let him chase them. Thinking about it now, Li Tianlan felt uncomfortable for a while. He believed that the Wang family of Beihai was even more annoyed. I was stopped by Worryless. Li Guangtu and Jiang Shangyu were seriously injured, but they ran away with more aid. Only more aid? Qin Weibai asked. Li Tianlan said. Qin Weibai's voice became softer and softer, with great satisfaction. I really have to call you Your Majesty from now on. I am His Majesty, and you are the Empress. Li Tianlan said with a smile, without any hesitation. Qin Weibai was silent for a moment and whispered, Come back soon. I miss you. Li Tianlan agreed and suddenly asked, how about East Island? It's coming to an end. Qin Weibai said softly. I just talked to them on the phone. In East Island, Jiang Shangyu seemed to have reached an agreement with the Holy Land. The newly trained Invincible Realm expert, Glavich, and 2,000 elites of the Holy Disarmament Corps were all sent to East Island. Glavich died, and the Holy Disarmament Corps also suffered heavy casualties. The Nightmare Troop flattened the headquarters of Jifeng Sword Raining School and Wuji Palace. At present, there are still some special warfare forces inside East Island, but they have been broken up. You said that Jiang Shangyu and Li Kuangta only took Moraid away. Then, without Yagyu Kurumi and Tianhai Wuji, everything in East Island has been settled. It just needs some time to clean up and establish the order of Emperor Dong's palace. Saint and Hidden God have already met. In the next period of time, most of them will stay in East Island. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and said softly, when the time is right, I will go to East Island again. How is the loss of the Nightmare Troop? Qin Weibai's voice stopped. The loss of the Nightmare Troop in East Island had been calculated as soon as possible. What Situt Songyue and Saint reported was an unbelievable and absurd number. When Qin Weibai heard the number for the first time, she even thought it was a joke. 161 people of the Nightmare Troop died in battle, no serious injuries, no minor injuries. Qin Weibai said in a strange tone. Li Tianlan nodded subconsciously. Then he suddenly realized something and asked, what is it? He asked, as if he suspected that he had heard it wrong. Situt Songyue and Saint were both experts of the Invincible Realm. The former was close to the peak of the Invincible Realm, and the latter's Invincible Realm had not been completely stabilized, but his sword energy and sword intent were extremely sharp. These two people led the Nightmare Troop. When he blocked the Purgatory of Heaven capital, they were fully qualified to wipe out the dark forces in East Island. Li Tianlan was not surprised by this result. What surprised him was the number of casualties. Wiping out Jifeng Sword Raining School, Wuji Palace, fighting with the Holy Disarmament Corps, countless dark forces big and small in East Island. It was a night of desperate fighting. Less than 200 people of the Nightmare Troop with 2,000 people died in battle, and there were no serious injuries, no minor injuries. This also meant that after the Nightmare Troop wiped out East Island with less than 1/10 of the casualties, all the remaining people were still in a vigorous state. 61 people of the Hidden Gods team died in battle, and 100 people of the Saints team died in battle. The only difference is that the former met Xianyuan Wushang earlier. Qin Weibai's voice gradually became serious. After meeting the fat man, it seemed that everything started to become strange. At present, all these changes were greatly beneficial to Emperor Dong's palace, but the feeling that something was out of control became more and more obvious. Qin Weibai didn't like this feeling, although Xianyuan Wushang did make a great contribution to Emperor Dong's palace overnight. The Hidden God and the Saint confirmed that no matter how chaotic the battle was after Xianyuan Wushang arrived on the battlefield, from the moment he appeared, not a single one of our elites was lost. Not to mention any losses, we didn't even suffer any light injuries. Although the Nightmare Legion's physical strength is severely depleted, their overall condition is unbelievably good. Xianyuan Wushang, Li Tianlan murmured to himself and suddenly said, he said he was a doctor. Qin Weibai nodded. What kind of doctor is he? A miracle-working doctor? Li Tianlan laughed. Anyway, Tianlan, you have to have a good talk with him. It is said that when the battle in East Island was at its fiercest, it rained, and it was in that rain that all the soldiers' injuries were healed. Don't you think this is very similar to the effect of the dragon vein? Qin Weibai said softly. Rain. Rain. Li Tianlan suddenly thought of the rain on Mount Dibing. An incomparably sharp light flashed in his eyes. I got it. Li Tianlan took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, where is Xianyuan Wushang? He's already on the way back. After he brought Saint and the Hidden God, he came back with Xing Tian by helicopter. If your plane is not delayed, you should arrive at Tiannan at about the same time. Qin Weibai said. Li Tianlan said, in his mind, the rain on Mount Dibing became clearer and clearer. Everything was revived, and the vitality was majestic. Li Tianlan thought quietly and narrowed his eyes tightly. Chapter 1027. Li Tianlan thought for a while, then shook his head slightly and continued. I should arrive earlier than him. If I'm late, you can receive him for me first. It won't take long. Li Tianlan was almost sure that the rain on Mount Dibing had something to do with Xianyuan Wuxiang. In this way, he had the answer to why Wang Tianzong's sword qi doppelganger suddenly had a complete consciousness. Otherwise, in Wang Tianzong's state, the current sword qi doppelganger should be dominated by worryless. Xianyuan Wuxiang did help Wang Tianzong, but in Li Tianlan's view, he could do far more than that. Only he could vaguely feel what the majestic vitality meant. At this time, Wang Tianzong's injury had indeed improved a lot, but strictly speaking, he was just barely out of the line of death, and his consciousness was relatively active. Xianyuan Wuxiang saved Wang Tianzong's life, but if he wanted to, according to the scale of the rain, Li Tianlan had no doubt that Xianyuan Wuxiang could temporarily wake Wang Tianzong up. He could do it, but he didn't. His help saved Li Tianlan from the crisis of facing worryless, which was undoubtedly his kindness to Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan didn't know if the rain meant that Xianyuan Wuxiang carried the fate of other countries, or something else. But in the face of such a person, even if he really ran to him and called him Big Brother, he couldn't really treat him as a little brother. Apart from other things, since he went to East Island and entered the battlefield, Emperor Dong's palace didn't lose anyone. For this alone, Xianyuan Wuxiang deserved some respect from Li Tianlan. Okay, I'll arrange it. Qin Weibai nodded and said softly. Li Tianlan nodded and heard the sound of his phone running out of battery. He slowly shook his head and said, the phone is running out of battery. I'm hanging up. Okay. Qin Weibai paused and suddenly said, is Beihai really okay? The helicopter was flying above. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and said, are you worried that the joint forces will come back? Even if they will, I don't know how long it will be, at least not now. No, I mean, although you helped Beihai, Wang Shengxiao seems to have feelings for Wuqing. Qin Weibai said softly. He can only think about it. Li Tianlan smiled a little coldly. I'm in good health now, but I'm in a bad state. But no matter what, Wang Tianzong's Beihai can handle me. Wang Shengxiao is under a lot of pressure. He has too many things on his back, so it's inevitable that he's overcautious. I don't care what he thinks, just like many people have ideas about you. I dare to chop him up, but he doesn't dare to. He doesn't even dare to try. How domineering. Qin Weibai's voice was sweet and sticky. Li Tianlan laughed. He was not complacent, but he inevitably felt a little relieved. I actually hoped that he could try, but unfortunately. Silence. Li Tianlan was still speaking. However, all sounds seemed to have disappeared in an instant. Kacha, the phone shattered in Li Tianlan's hand. Li Tianlan's pupils instantly contracted to the extreme. The moment the fragments of the mobile phone fell from his hand, Li Tianlan stretched out his palm. Heartless, who had already transformed into a greatsword, suddenly shuddered. Boom. An earth-shattering noise suddenly sounded in the dense forest below the helicopter, roaring endlessly. There were many people in the dark world who had ideas about Li Tianlan. And there were also many people who had ideas about Heartless. If they killed Li Tianlan, they would get benefits. If they killed Heartless, they would get absolutely invincible force. What Wang Shengxiao dared not try, someone dared to try. The surrounding space was turbulent and shattered. The normal flying helicopter was directly torn into scrap iron in the moment when the domain fluctuated. The pilot of the Wang family of Beihai silently evaporated in the air. Li Tianlan's palm touched the hilt of the sword. A streak of sword energy protected Moongaze and Song in front of him. In his sight, the whole forest below was shaking wildly. The majestic sword energy and the tide-like domain merged with each other, forming a wave of air that swept through the area of 10,000 meters in an instant. The domain and the sword energy were completely boiling, rising into the sky, and in an instant, they were directly in front of Li Tianlan. They were caught off guard. Jiang Shangyu. Li Kuangtu. Li Tianlan was not on guard at all. The surging sword light and domain, which were enough to tear everything apart, surged into the sky. Jiang Shangyu and Li Kuangtu could not be seen. Their joint attack lifted the whole forest in an instant. Broken tree trunks, flying leaves, and cold snow flew toward Li Tianlan under the surging power. They covered the sky and the sun. They arrived in an instant. No one expected Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu to appear here. The two of them, who were seriously injured, did not escape. Instead, they ambushed Li Tianlan here. There was no despicable and shameless saying in the dark world. There was no doubt that if Li Tianlan died here today, then the final battle in Beihai would be a wonderful turnaround for Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu. Li Tianlan raised the Heartless in his hand. The huge sword body of the Heartless trembled violently. Bang! The dark sword body shattered in an instant. The little energy that was left in the Heartless suddenly burst out at the most critical moment. The colorful energy was mighty. At the moment when the sword light and the broken domain hit Li Tianlan, it formed a protective shield and enveloped Li Tianlan. It was like a huge wave crashing against the reef. The boundless surging domain and the sword light directly collided with the protective barrier, and then rushed past it. The domain and the sword light surged into the distance, and then turned back at a faster speed. Standing in the protective shield, Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes tightly. Ahem! A hoarse cough with a hint of weakness could be heard. Li Tianlan still did not see Li Guangtu and Jiang Shangyu, but Li Guangtu's voice seemed to be in his ears. Our enmity actually began in Tiandu. As if he was muttering to himself, Li Guangtu's voice had an extremely depressed and cold emotion. My only son died in the hands of the Samsara Palace. It can only be that he died in the hands of the Samsara Palace. The sword light was surging. The two experts who had surpassed the peak of the invincible realm attacked with all their strength. The little energy that was left in the Heartless was consumed at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the protective shield was getting thinner and thinner. There was no doubt that when the protective shield broke, Li Tianlan, who had almost no physical strength, would be completely torn apart in an instant. It's that bitch Qin Weibai's idea. Li Guangtu laughed extremely coldly. Go in peace. If you see the old man on the way, tell him that I will make the Li family surpass the peak. You can all rest in peace. I will get Emperor Dong's palace, and I will get Qin Weibai. She killed my son, so she must give me another one. The boiling sword light suddenly intensified. In an instant, the morning sunshine was completely suppressed. It was dark between heaven and earth, and only the extremely crazy sword energy rushed over endlessly. Crack! A ghastly crack appeared on the protective barrier. Li Guangtu's voice fell. Everything you have is mine. Crack! The cracks covered the entire protective shield in an instant. Li Tianlan, who was expressionless, looked at the sword light in front of him and whispered, "Isn't it good to be alive?" The shattered Heartless had become the 13-story building, constantly shaking around Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan had no sword in his hand. He just raised his palm casually and closed his eyes. His finger lightly tapped on the protective shield. A weak, almost imperceptible sword energy flowed out of Li Tianlan's hand. The darkness was instantly broken. The sun shrouded the earth again. The sword energy in Li Tianlan's hand disappeared. The surging domain and sword light in front of him also completely disappeared. Puff! Blood spurted out of Li Tianlan's mouth. The tiny, almost imperceptible sword energy slowly fluctuated between heaven and earth. Puff! Not only the corners of his mouth, but every part of Li Tianlan's body was breaking. Blood spurted out of his body. As far as his eyes could see, everything was disappearing. The forest within the area of tens of thousands of meters disappeared completely in an instant. It was not breaking. It was really, inexplicably disappearing without warning. Li Tianlan's body trembled violently. Thousands of wounds appeared on his body in an instant, covering his whole body. At the same time, European land. In Worry's villa. Qin Weibai, who was lying quietly in the nutrition chamber, frowned slightly. A clear crack appeared between her eyebrows, and crystal blood flowed out from between her eyebrows. On the helicopter from East Island to Tiannan, Xianyuan Wushang's face changed dramatically. He couldn't see Li Tianlan through the screen, but at this moment, in his sight, the whole world had changed completely. The tiny sword energy that seemed to disappear at any time was still surging in Beihai. The tens of thousands of meters of forest had completely disappeared. The sword energy was surging, rushing to Mount Dibing and Xingzhou City. Everything disappeared silently the moment it came into contact with the sword qi. Li Tianlan's body was almost drained of vitality in an instant, and even his heart began to break. F***ck. Xianyuan Wushang suddenly cursed. In front of Saint, he suddenly stood up. The moment he stood up, there were many illusory blue lines in the whole world. Countless symbols replaced the surrounding space and filled the world. At the same time, the world around Li Tianlan suddenly became virtual. Countless lines wandered wildly between heaven and earth, flashing one symbol after another. The world became completely virtual in an instant. There was no distance in the virtual world. Xianyuan Wushang took a step forward. The next second, his chubby hand directly grabbed Li Tianlan's shoulder, and his whole body appeared in front of Li Tianlan. The voice of F***ck was still echoing over East Island. Above Beihai, Xianyuan Wushang's voice also rang out. Are you crazy? Endless vitality poured into Li Tianlan's body. The sword energy that was slowly fluctuating in the distance disappeared without a trace the moment he appeared. Crack! The world returned to normal. The virtual world became real again. The eyes on the bridge of Xianyuan Wushang's nose exploded without warning. The fragments flew everywhere, and two dazzling red lines of blood flowed out of Xianyuan Wushang's eyes. Li Tianlan's consciousness was completely blurred, and he was about to fall silent. Xianyuan Wushang's glasses exploded. He was only a doctor, and he didn't even have the ability to float. The two of them leaned close to each other, and fell from the sky quickly. At the same time, the two of them fell. No one knew how far away. In an incomparably huge and magnificent laboratory, countless signal lights all lit up in an instant. The next second, a clear and somewhat weird voice rang out. Miracle City found, location confirmed, Apostle number 6 is about to go, distance estimation in progress, distance estimation complete, distance unknown, set off immediately. Chapter 1028. Bang! Smoke and dust flew all over the sky. Xianyuan Wushang held Li Tianlan, who was covered in blood, and smashed him to the ground. Xianyuan Wushang, who looked sad and angry, felt that he was not cool at all. He landed in a very awkward position, but his body was not injured. Blood was still flowing from his eyes, dripping. The drops of blood were extremely bright in the sun, red and dazzling. Xianyuan Wushang wiped his eyes casually and opened his eyes, which were completely overflowing with blood. As soon as he got up, he began to check Li Tianlan's situation. In the silent world, there was an extremely subtle sound. Blood penetrated the skin, cut through the clothes, and soaked the ground. Li Tianlan lay quietly on the ground without a sound. It seemed that he had completely died. His injury seemed to have almost completely destroyed his consciousness. He was so seriously injured that even the dragon vein had fallen silent. The white mist of vitality that seemed to be able to heal his body at any time soon disappeared. Crazy, Xianyuan Wushang muttered to himself. He opened his eyes and blood kept flowing from his eyes. His eyes were blood red, which looked extremely horrible, as if he was shedding tears of blood. I knew you were fierce, but you were too fierce. Damn it, I knew there was a trap in the 24 moves of sword left by that guy. Reincarnation. Damn you. Xianyuan Wushang gently pressed his hand on Li Tianlan's chest. Strong vitality bloomed in an instant. The completely boiling white mist rose into the sky with strong vitality. From a distance, it seemed that a huge cloud had suddenly appeared above the two of them. Xianyuan Wushang's whole body was emitting a faint light. The light was not dazzling, but it looked soft and lively. Wisps of light enveloped Li Tianlan little by little, healing the wounds on his body. Li Tianlan's body lay quietly on the ground. His body began to sink slowly. Xianyuan Wushang's body was also sinking. The wind and clouds were surging in the empty forest, and the majestic vitality kept surging, more and more intense. The flat land under Li Tianlan had quickly turned into yellow sand at a speed visible to the naked eye. The range of the yellow sand kept expanding. 10 meters, 100 meters, 1,000 meters, several thousand meters. The originally lush forest was razed to the ground by Li Tianlan's sword. Now, as the white fog surged, the forest within an area of nearly 10,000 meters completely turned into a desert at a speed that was enough to make everyone stunned. Xianyuan Wushang was expressionless, but his seemingly harmless face was extremely stern. The soft light shrunk back and forth between him and Li Tianlan. Within an area of nearly 10,000 meters, every blade of grass, every tree, and even the vitality of the earth were all extracted by him to heal Li Tianlan's wounds. The wounds on Li Tianlan's body were disappearing at a very slow rate. And with the two of them as the center, the area of the desert. It was getting bigger and bigger. Xianyuan Wushang hesitated, glanced in the direction of Mount Dibing, and slowly stopped. The light dissipated. Most of the wounds on Li Tianlan's body had healed completely. However, the inside of his body was still in a state of fragmentation. His consciousness had already declined to the lowest point, like a candle that was about to burn out. He didn't even need wind. Just a small gust of air was enough to completely extinguish the flame. Xianyuan Wushang's eyes were gloomy. This kind of injury was indeed extremely terrible. But Xianyuan Wushang thought he was the most professional doctor. If this kind of injury happened to someone else, or in another place, it would not be a problem for him at all. He had countless ways to make the other person recover in the shortest time possible. But he couldn't cure Li Tianlan. It was just like how it was difficult for him to cure Qin Weibai in a short time. Because of Qin Weibai, he could do almost nothing about Li Tianlan's current injury. Real. Xianyuan Wushang muttered to himself, and his whole person became more and more irritable. Li Tianlan's current injury was so serious because of the sword energy. This could definitely be regarded as a huge mistake. But it was also a mistake that Xianyuan Wushang had not expected at all. Xing Tian's attack in East Island changed something. At that time, Xianyuan Wushang saw Li Tianlan's abnormality on the screen, but his attention was all on Wuqing. Wuqing could feel the sword energy in the sky, and he was not surprised. But Xianyuan Wushang did not expect that Li Tianlan could also feel the sword energy. Perhaps in Li Tianlan's mind, his kendo was already perfect, and there was no sword energy that he could not withstand. So in the face of Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu's sneak attack, he directly used the thing that he did not see clearly, and was not even sure if it was sword energy. The 15th blade Samsara. After that, it was not the shattering of land, but an imitation of the sword energy. Li Tianlan's imitation was somewhat nondescript. It could be said that he did not grasp the essence at all, and did not even have the shape. But that kind of sword energy should not have existed. Even if it was just an imitation, Li Tianlan suffered irreversible damage in an instant. And that nondescript sword energy also did not completely break out, but there was a wisp of seemingly and extremely weak sword intent. The moment the sword intent surged, the vitality in Li Tianlan's body had almost been drained. His body was completely torn apart, and his internal organs were permanently damaged. The foundation of martial arts was almost completely broken, and his spiritual will was in chaos. Xianyuan Wushang alone could do nothing about Li Tianlan's current state. If it were not for Qin Weibai of the Worry-Free Villa, Li Tianlan would have completely died the moment the sword energy appeared. Xianyuan Wushang tried to enter the depths of Li Tianlan's consciousness, but his several attempts all ended in failure. Li Tianlan's consciousness still existed. But that kind of existence was almost non-existent. You are really my brother. Can I call you my brother? Xianyuan Wushang smiled bitterly. I just got here, and I'm going to ask for help from my family. Will many people think that I'm a good-for-nothing? He muttered to himself and stretched out his palm. Pieces of glimmer appeared in the sun. Let's get out of here first. Xianyuan Wushang whispered. Countless broken glimmers gathered in Xianyuan Wushang's hand. Those were the fragments of his glasses that had been blown up when he was in the air. Tisk, Xianyuan Wushang shook his head. I can use it again. He clenched the fragments in his hand. All kinds of light enveloped him and Li Tianlan. Heaven and earth were nothingness. Everything around them was distorting. The desert, the cold wind, the sky, the white clouds, the sun, everything became fainter and fainter in the distortion. Xianyuan Wushang carefully carried Li Tianlan on his back. Feeling his cold body temperature, Xianyuan Wushang also felt cold in his heart. His expression looked extremely tragic. Everything in the world disappeared. Amidst the extreme distortions, everything in the surroundings turned into pieces of virtual, yet existing data. Xianyuan Wushang sighed and took a step forward with Li Tianlan on his back. The broken piece of glasses in his hand suddenly shattered into pieces, turning into a cloud of dust. The surrounding environment instantly changed from cold to warm. Xianyuan Wuxiang appeared in a warm and comfortable bedroom with Li Tianlan on his back. The bedroom was filled with a natural and rich fragrance. Xianyuan Wuxiang carefully put Li Tianlan on the big bed in the bedroom. The sun in Tiannan was just right. Xianyuan Wuxiang hesitated, then opened the door and went out. Outside the bedroom was a luxurious corridor. Xianyuan Wuxiang entered the elevator. The elevator went all the way down to the first floor. When the elevator door opened, what appeared in front of Xianyuan Wuxiang was the picture of the hall on the first floor of the headquarters of Emperor Dong's palace. Qin Weibai had just put down the phone in her hand and was about to enter the elevator with a slight frown. She did not know why Li Tianlan suddenly hung up the phone, but the moment the phone was hung up, her heart was occupied by a fierce uneasiness without warning. Uneasy, she subconsciously raised her head the moment the elevator door opened. The next second, she was obviously stunned for a moment. Sister-in-law. Xianyuan Wuxiang smiled helplessly. Qin Weibai looked stunned. Why are you here? It's not just me. Xianyuan Wuxiang touched his nose. I brought my big brother back. He's in your bedroom now. Chapter 1029. The sound of the instrument's operation echoed in the bedroom. The pen kept recording all kinds of physical data on the paper. Nalan Shuriang stared at the constantly flowing symbols on the screen, her face stiff and pale. Qin Weibai sat by the bed and reached out to hold Li Tianlan's cold palm. She had been silent for a long time. Less than a minute after she hung up the phone, Xianyuan Wuxiang and Li Tianlan, who had not been together before, returned to Tiannan from East Island and Beihai respectively. This sounded absolutely incredible, but no one could care about it at this time. All Qin Weibai's thoughts were on Li Tianlan. Click! The subtle sound of the instrument suddenly increased a little, and then it stopped operating. Nalan Shuriang stared at the last line of symbols flowing out of the instrument, and gently bit her lip. How is it? Qin Weibai raised her head and looked at Nalan Shuriang, a little nervous. Nalan Shuriang seemed to be confirming something. She reached out and took the notebook in the assistant's hand that recorded Li Tianlan's data. She glanced at it and then fell silent again. Speak. Qin Weibai's heart kept sinking, and her voice became cold. She had a hunch about something. Li Tianlan's hand was held by her, and it was cold without any temperature. She hoped that she could hear a glimmer of hope, but Nalan Shuriang was destined not to give her this. His Majesty's physical condition is very good, that is to say, he has no trauma. But most of the tissues in his body have been torn apart, especially the heart and the area around the heart. There are more than 320 wounds of various kinds. At present, almost all the organs in His Majesty's body have lost activity, and they have basically stopped running and self-repairing, so. Nalan Shuriang paused and said with some embarrassment, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. Qin Weibai's body shook violently. Nalan Shuriang's voice continued. Now it seems that His Majesty's injury is even more serious than that of the one in Warefree Villa. At present, we can only test his body and we can't even test his consciousness or. She wanted to say something but stopped on second thought, but her meaning was very clear. Basically, it was unlikely that their instruments could not detect the patient's consciousness. Now that this happened, it seemed that there could only be one problem. Li Tianlan had lost consciousness. Without consciousness, he was naturally a dead man. Li Tianlan had reached the limit of the human body in all aspects, ensuring the activity of his body. So now it seemed that he was still alive, but in fact he had already died. This was Nalan Shuriang's conclusion. When she tested the master of Samsara Palace of Carefree Villa, the conclusion she got was that she was infinitely close to death, but at least there was still hope. But now Li Tianlan being infinitely close to death and truly dying were two completely different concepts. Qin Weibai's body trembled slightly. She looked at Li Tianlan on the bed. Li Tianlan's face quickly became blurred and hazy in his sight. How could this be? She muttered to herself. We just hung up the phone. She touched Li Tianlan's face and looked around the bedroom blankly. Everything around him was a blur. Qin Weibai rubbed her eyes and finally saw Xianyuan Wuxiang, who was standing in a corner with a gloomy expression and seemed to be thinking about something. What happened? She asked softly. At this moment, Qin Weibai looked a little pitiful, but with a kind of extreme madness. Xianyuan Wushang's eyes flickered, and his mind wandered. He seemed to be hesitating about something, so he didn't hear Qin Weibai's voice at all, nor did he hear the conversation between Nailan Shuriying and Qin Weibai. Tell me, what's going on? Qin Weibai asked again. Her voice was faint, with an indescribable deathly stillness. Xianyuan Wushang suddenly came to his senses. He scratched his head. It's Jiang Shangyu and Li Kuangtu. After they withdrew from Mount Dibing, they didn't choose to leave. They chose to sneak attack Big Brother on his way back. Big Brother used some means that he shouldn't have used now, so that his body couldn't bear the power he used and completely collapsed. Strictly speaking, it's not a big deal, but it's a little troublesome. Jiang Shangyu Li Kuangtu, sneak attack, completely collapsed. One word after another made Qin Weibai's eyes burn with endless madness, but all the crazy emotions disappeared at a faster speed. Nailan Shuriying looked at Xianyuan Wushang with a dull face. Both she and Qin Weibai captured Xianyuan Wushang's last words. It was not a big deal, but it was a little troublesome. If such a situation was not a big deal, then what was a big deal? Qin Weibai suddenly stood up. It seemed that because she used too much strength, her body swayed forward. She fell down. Horsewoman on the side subconsciously supported Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai's voice was a little distorted with excitement. Can you save Tianlan? I can't. Xianyuan Wushang shook his head. This is the most troublesome part, but I have a way. What way? Tell me. Qin Weibai's voice was a little shrill. Xianyuan Wushang hesitated and shook his head. Looking at Qin Weibai, he said with a wry smile, Sister-in-law, don't worry. I treated Big Brother's external injuries, so I know his situation very well. You really can't do anything about such an injury, but I have more than one way. That's why I'm hesitating. Because at present, I can think of different ways that will lead to different consequences. I've informed my family about this. Say something I can understand. Qin Weibai stared into Xianyuan Wushang's eyes. How can Tianlan get better now? 3 days. It should be enough. Xianyuan Wushang's tone was straightforward and calm. No words could be more powerful than this guarantee. Qin Weibai's body obviously relaxed for a moment, and she asked without hesitation, what does your family want? We don't need anything. Xianyuan Wushang laughed. Sister-in-law, I've been saying and doing since I came here. We are family, so I don't mind you being on guard against me. Because there are some things that I really can't say now, and I can't explain to you. But I really don't need you to do anything to help Emperor Dong's palace. Our family can't let anything happen to Big Brother. Qin Weibai looked at Xianyuan Wushang seriously and said seriously, thank you. Xianyuan Wushang smiled and waved his hand. I'll take care of Big Brother. He laughed softly and said, I need peace. Remove all the equipment here and take away the medicine. Nailan Shuriying was obviously stunned and subconsciously looked at Qin Weibai. Remove the equipment and take away the medicine? Qin Weibai frowned slightly. What are you going to do? We've already begun to discuss countermeasures. I'll participate in the family meeting later. As for now, my father suggested that I communicate with sister-in-law. Xianyuan Wushang said. Communicate with me about what? Qin Weibai was a little surprised. It's not you. Xianyuan Wushang shook his head and then nodded. But it's also you. To be exact, it's you in Worry-Free Heights. Chapter 1030. The desert stopped spreading. Yellow sand replaced the forest, covering an area of nearly 20 kilometers outside Qingzhou City. It could be called a miracle in the daytime. The geological survey team of Beihai responded immediately. Wang Shengxiao didn't even have time to deal with the affairs of Mount Dibing and Kanglin. He rushed here as fast as he could. All kinds of information from Kanglin kept coming. Wang Shengxiao browsed through the messages one after another, feeling a little uneasy. The phone rang suddenly. Wang Shengxiao's palm shook violently, and he answered the phone immediately. Patriarch, the location is confirmed. The voice of Lu Yang, the person in charge of Mount Dibing Air Force Base, sounded. 205 meters in front of you is the place where B-2-013 lost contact. B-2-013. To be precise, it was the number 013 helicopter of the 2nd Squadron of Team B of Mount Dibing Air Force Base. When Li Tianlan left Mount Dibing for Shenzhou Airport, he took this helicopter. The helicopter suddenly lost contact when it approached Shenzhou, and all the signals were completely cut off. Wang Shengxiao felt something was wrong when he got the news, so he quickly went down the mountain and rushed to the scene. He got the news of the desert in Xing'ou 10 minutes ago when he was on his way here. Wang Shengxiao took the phone and nodded, then walked forward about 200 meters. Lu Yang's voice sounded again. It's about here with an error of about 2 meters. Wang Shengxiao looked up at the sky. After the snow, the sun in Beihai was clear and bright, and the sky was blue. Under his feet was soft and dry yellow sand. There was nothing unusual here, and no helicopter wreckage could be seen. Wang Shengxiao was silent for a while, and suddenly waved his hand. A sharp sword intent suddenly appeared in the desert. The sword energy went deep into the ground, and in an instant, it soaked the desert for dozens of meters under his feet. Still nothing was found. No, Wang Shengxiao said. Number 013 disappeared very suddenly. Its signal was completely cut off and disappeared in 0.7 seconds. This speed is faster than the reaction speed of the pilot, and it is faster than number 013's warning mechanism. It makes me feel as if it disappeared into thin air the moment it appeared here. Lu Yang's tone was a little strange. Wang Shengxiao twitched the corner of his mouth, but the smile on his face was a little vague. Do you think this is the Bermuda Triangle? Unsolved mystery? Actually, I've always been very interested in these things, but that's not the main point. The most mysterious part of an unsolved mystery is the unknown. Right now, we don't know how 013 disappeared, but from the looks of it, the sudden appearance of this desert is directly related to the disappearance of 013. We can be sure that just yesterday, no, just a few hours or even an hour ago, this place was still a forest. It's impossible for this desert to appear. Lu Yang said softly. I think I know what's going on. Wang Shengxiao's voice was calm. Do you have satellite images? It doesn't matter even if it's a little blurry. Lu Yang was silent for a moment. Wang Shengxiao immediately realized something and shook his head helplessly. Of course, there were satellite images from before. The military low-altitude satellites of the Wang family of Beihai had been covering every corner of Beihai. However, with the end of the battle in Mount Dibing and Li Tianlan's departure from Beihai, Wang Shengxiao had immediately ordered the military satellites of Beihai to capture the images of Kanglan City. What happened here was still a blank space for Beihai for the time being. There are no satellite images. But according to the power detection system we have set up near Mount Dibing and Shenzhou, Your Majesty, there was a burst of extremely terrifying power fluctuations in an instant. Because our detection system is not very perfect at present, the data we get is not very accurate. But roughly speaking, the power fluctuations that burst out at that moment seem to have exceeded the peak of our current record. Wang Shengxiao's expression tightened. He knew very well what the peak of the power detection system that Beihai had recently developed meant. Because it had not been developed for long, some of the data had errors and could not even be detected. For example, the eternal sword above Mormons represented the peak of martial arts in the dark world for hundreds of years. Because of the overdraft of the master of Samsara Palace regardless of the cost, because of the ruthless full outburst, and because the chosen one's sword intent of Samsara were mixed together, it produced extremely complicated parameters that were difficult to measure accurately. The peak data recorded by the power detection system of Beihai was the data of Wang Tianzong's sword energy, when he was in Mormons. That was the data when Wang Tianzong had just set foot on that supreme level after the breakthrough. The peak of the power that burst out at that moment just now surpassed that of Wang Tianzong in the period of Mormons. Li Tianlan broke through. How was that possible? Are you sure? Wang Shengxiao asked. There's no problem with the data, but the power appeared for a very short time, probably less than 2 seconds, and suddenly disappeared. Lu Yang's voice was a little confused. Wang Shengxiao held the phone and remained silent. Naturally, he did not think about the unsolved mystery. In his opinion, the helicopter was suddenly attacked when it flew over the sky. The strong sword intent or domain completely melted the helicopter in the flying state in an instant. Then Li Tianlan's full outburst. The extreme high temperature brought by the huge power evaporated everything in the forest in an instant. So the land became a desert. In theory, this could be explained. It was just a desert with a range of 20 kilometers. This sword covered an area of 20,000 meters. Was it so exaggerated? Was Li Tianlan not sure where the target was at that time? And how did Li Tianlan surpass Wang Tianzong in power? If he had broken through successfully, why did that power only appear for less than 2 seconds? Wang Shengxiao remembered the conversation with Li Tianlan before. Li Tianlan said that he was not sure to deal with Wang Tianzong's sword energy doppelganger, but he was sure to destroy the entire Wang family of Beihai. Was it because of this sword? If so, this sword seemed to be a kind of explosive ability. Then what was Li Tianlan's current state? The key was where Li Tianlan was now. Wang Shengxiao hesitated for a moment, but finally took out his mobile phone and dialed Qin Weibai's number. All the instruments were removed. All the drugs were taken away. After Nalan Shuriying's team left the huge bedroom on the top floor of the castle, the bedroom suddenly fell into silence. Li Tianlan was still lying silently on the bed, as if he had no vitality. Qin Weibai looked at Li Tianlan quietly, and then looked at Xianyuan Wushang. "I don't understand what you mean," she said slowly. "What does it have to do with me?" "It has a lot to do with it, but it's also something that can't be explained for the time being." Xianyuan Wushang said seriously, "In my opinion, Big Brother's Samsara sword, he was tricked. Maybe it's not the real situation, but it doesn't matter. Under normal circumstances, even if Big Brother broke through and entered the so-called Supreme Realm, he would not be able to exert the power of that sword. He could not even imitate it. The reason why he was able to fight back successfully in that situation was because of Big Sister-in-law in Europe. But that was also the problem. Because of Big Sister-in-law, Big Brother did not die completely, but it was also because of her that his current injury became a little troublesome." "Why is that?" Qin Weibai was baffled by his words. "Because she's special." Xianyuan Wushang paused, suddenly smiled playfully, and said meaningfully, "Sister-in-law's situation is similar to time travel, or a parallel universe or a rebirth. No matter what, under normal circumstances, since she is here, you shouldn't be here now. Well, let's not talk about this. The most important thing is that all this has happened now." He looked at Qin Weibai and said softly, "Sister-in-law, do you really think this is a coincidence? Do you really think there is no human factor in it? There are so many people in the world, and every day different people welcome death or new life. Why can sister-in-law have a rebirth? Is it possible to be a coincidence?" Qin Weibai's body suddenly shook. "Human factor. Human factor? Human factor. What do you mean?" She took a deep breath and asked in a low voice. "Your existence is a very special form of existence that I can't understand." Xianyuan Wushang shook his head. "To be exact, your existence is a paradox." Chapter 1031. How could there be so many coincidences? Xianyuan Wushang said something that Qin Weibai couldn't understand at all. He pressed his palm on Li Tianlan's chest. Wisps of dense white mist floated up from Li Tianlan's body. Xianyuan Wushang's expression was calm. He said softly, "Any incredible coincidence, in the final analysis, is a kind of inevitability. But most of the time we can't understand it." A breeze suddenly blew. An airflow suddenly appeared in the bedroom with its doors and windows closed. Xianyuan Wushang's whole body began to glow. The clear light was hazy. The breeze blew away the clear light and gradually merged with the extremely thin white mist on Li Tianlan's body. Crack! The clear sound of bones cracking suddenly rang out. Qin Weibai suddenly opened her eyes wide. Xianyuan Wushang's hand on Li Tianlan's chest seemed to have lost all strength and support in an instant. The bones in his hand were almost shattered in an instant. The blood-stained white bones pierced through his flesh and skin. Crack! The dense sound of bones cracking, which was enough to make people's scalps numb, rang out. Xianyuan Wushang's head hung down without any warning. All the bones in his body seemed to have been shattered in an instant, and blood gushed out of his body. He had been sitting on the bed, but with the dense sound of bones cracking, his body lost its support in an instant and lay next to Li Tianlan in an extremely stiff posture. In Qin Weibai's sight, Xianyuan Wushang's expression and skin began to change at a speed visible to the naked eye. They turned blue and finally became a gray without any vitality. Blood flowed on his body. In this state, Xianyuan Wushang looked like a corpse that had been dead for an unknown period of time. Faint but shocking sounds of explosions kept ringing out in his body. Qin Weibai couldn't see what was happening in Xianyuan Wushang's body, but the constant vibrations seemed to be constantly tearing the strange things in his body. His heart, blood vessels, muscles, and bones seemed to be torn apart by that kind of power in the shortest time possible. Xianyuan Wushang's eyes were still open. His face was gray. His face, which used to look harmless to humans and animals, was now indescribably strange and ferocious. Qin Weibai had seen a lot of dead bodies. However, in the extremely quiet bedroom, the scene in front of her made her instinctively feel uncomfortable. Her scalp went numb, her body tensed up, and even her breathing seemed to carry a sense of nervousness and fear. Xianyuan Wushang didn't breathe or have a heartbeat, but his open eyes flashed with an incomparably clear trace of mockery and arrogance. A cold and gloomy voice sounded with disdain and contempt. Order. The white mist and hazy clear light completely enveloped him and Li Tianlan. Xianyuan Wushang didn't finish. Qin Weibai can't hear. In the depths of the colorful consciousness, a voice echoed, I am also in order. His voice seemed to spread throughout the entire space, echoing in the boundless world. It was quiet all around. Covered in blood, Xianyuan Wushang stood in place, staring blankly at the colorful world around him. His body was still lying beside Li Tianlan, but his own consciousness had already appeared in the depths of Qin Weibai's consciousness. The real Qin Weibai, or the depths of Gu Xianyan's consciousness. It was no longer a virtual doppelganger. Without that pair of glasses, Xianyuan Wushang didn't have the ability of virtual doppelganger and virtual intrusion. His current consciousness was his own consciousness. In other words, if he was trapped here, then Xianyuan Wushang in Emperor Dong's palace would die completely. This was undoubtedly a very serious consequence. But the problem was that Xianyuan Wushang seemed to have just noticed this problem. Blood continued to flow out of his body. Countless rays of light floated and shone around him. The moment he came to his senses, Xianyuan Wushang's expression suddenly changed. He looked as if he had seen a ghost, and he subconsciously blurted out a curse. The curse also echoed wildly between heaven and earth, like thunder all over the world. The light surged, indifferent and distant. Xianyuan Wushang's expression changed, and he didn't dare to move for a moment. Thousands of fur mud horses were galloping and roaring wildly in his heart. All his consciousness seemed to be completely frozen. There was only one thought left in his mind. Father, are you F*King trying to kill me? You are my father. Is this the F*King depth of Qin Weibai's consciousness? If he wasn't sure where he was, Xianyuan Wushang would even think that he had come to the wrong place. This is the F*King eternal furnace, Xianyuan Wushang murmured to himself. He hesitated for a long time, and finally took a tentative step forward. Puff! Blood suddenly burst out of his body. Xianyuan Wushang's body suddenly split open a huge wound that was so deep that bones could be seen. He looked down at the wound that almost spread to his heart, and wanted to cry but had no tears. My name is Wushang. I really want to go home. The reason was that the depth of Qin Weibai's consciousness was the same as Wang Tianzong's. Even if there was a difference, how big could the difference be? But the world in front of him was not the same concept as the depth of Wang Tianzong's consciousness. The depth of Wang Tianzong's consciousness was pitch black. It looked infinite, but also infinitely small. In fact, it was just a dot. But the depth of this colorful consciousness in front of him was completely like a boundless world. Where could he go to find Qin Weibai? Xianyuan Wushang took another step forward. The colorful light was slightly surging, and Xianyuan Wushang could not avoid it at all. Another wound was torn open on his body, dripping with blood. The clear light surged and enveloped his body, and the wounds on his body began to heal quickly. Xianyuan Wushang took a deep breath and continued to move forward. Another step. There was another wound. In the boundless light, Xianyuan Wushang kept moving forward. He had more and more wounds. Every time the wounds on his body reached a certain level, he would stop to heal himself and then move forward. Qin Weibai was still nowhere to be seen. His consciousness quickly sensed the exhaustion in his body. Time seemed to be meaningless. He didn't even know how long he had been here. He just kept healing and moving forward over and over again. Maybe it was 3 meters and 5 meters. Maybe it was 10,000 meters. Xianyuan Wuxiang, who was gradually numb, finally saw a mountain in front of him. In the constant light around him, the mountain was so different. The moment he saw the mountain seemed to see him. The light all over the world suddenly began to surge. The mountain began to tremble, but it was silent. The violent light all rushed over with the shaking of the mountain. There was light everywhere around him. The endless light instantly drowned Xianyuan Wuxiang. He was dripping with blood and covered with cuts and bruises. The body formed by Xianyuan Wuxiang's consciousness was completely torn apart again, and then reassembled with difficulty. Xianyuan Wuxiang gritted his teeth. This seemingly harmless fat man had an indescribable determination at this time. His eyes were firmly fixed on the mountain in the distance. The mountain was trembling and shrinking. The light tore his body again and again. After an unknown period of time, the multicolored radiance finally began to fade. The world became a nearly solidified ink painting again. In front of Xianyuan Wuxiang, the mountain disappeared. Or rather, the mountain shrank countless times. It became a delicate and beautiful but incomparably huge crown, slowly floating not far from Xianyuan Wuxiang. It was so clear, so real, so majestic and so beautiful. The whole world seemed to be completely dark. Only the crown in front of him was the only real thing. Real. Xianyuan Wuxiang's eyes were dazed. He looked at the crown in front of him and was silent for a long time. His consciousness had been exhausted to the extreme. He smiled in a trance. I see that you're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.